Ottawa.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, September 15th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 18 degrees, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau begins his day with a campaign stop in Halifax. Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole spends his day in Quebec. NDP's Jagmeet Singh will be spending the day in Ontario. Now, Elections Canada reports more than 1 million people have applied to vote by mail, and because they do not want to vote in person during the pandemic, more than half of those have already returned their ballots. Now, on Monday, you can expect fewer polling stations and less workers, and that could create a hassle for you on Monday. That's at least the warning from Elections Canada.
Voting day this coming Monday could take much longer than usual for many.
The lineups were wrapped around the block and down the street, with people probably increasing the length of the lineup with their 6 feet of social distance.
Experts tell the CBC the pandemic has made the electoral process more complicated, from trying to recruit workers and train them in time to implementing proper cleaning protocols at polling stations. The bottom line is be prepared to wait. Colin hopes people don't get frustrated and turn away.
Yeah, it's important to vote. Your right to vote is important to exercise your right to vote.
So if you got to line up and wait for a while, that's okay.
That's okay, yeah.
There likely won't be delays at every polling station, but the advice is maybe bring some water and something to pass the time in line with, like a book or a podcast. Well, I'm Carl Hansky.
City News Time, 9:01, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
It will be a quieter weather day overall today after that early morning thunderstorm activity. It was 23 degrees very early this morning. That's our high for the day. For the rest of the day, we'll sit at about 21. The temperature will drop a little bit around sunrise. Tonight, mainly clear and 10, and tomorrow, sun and cloud, 25. For today, already reached our high, 23.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 18 degrees. Financial Accountability Office in the province will release a report on Ontario's first quarter spending this morning. The update providing information on the province's 2021-22 spending plan and reviews unaudited spending by the government from April 1st until June 30th of this year. The report will be posted on the FAO website. That should be happening shortly. Stats Canada says the consumer price index for August rose 4.1% compared with 1 year ago. Now, that is the largest year-over-year inflation increase since March of 2003. The jump compared to a gain of 3.7% in July. Fueling much of that rise was higher gasoline and housing prices. The statistic agency also says homeowner replacement costs, so that's related to the price of a new home, rose at an annual rate of 14.3% in August. The pace of housing prices, the fastest yearly increase since September 1987. It marked the fourth consecutive month of double-digit price growth. City News Time, 9:03. Singer Alanis Morissette is boycotting a new documentary about her, calling it salacious and untrue.
The documentary Jagged is all about Alanis Morissette's rise to fame. She's featured prominently in it and was part of making it, but now she's very unhappy with it. It premiered at the Toronto Film Festival Monday, followed by headlines about how in the film she discusses being sexually assaulted. Morissette says in a statement that is not the story she agreed to tell, that the filmmakers had a salacious agenda, and the doc includes implications and facts that are simply not true. But she doesn't say specifically what in the film isn't true. Whatever the case, she says she won't support the film, which is supposed to premiere on HBO later this year. Jason Nathanson, ABC News, Hollywood.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Separating headlines
from hearsay.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Good morning, Ottawa! Welcome to the Rob Snow Show. Rob, off this week. Derek Fage filling in. Oh boy, do we got lots to talk about. No shortage of things to talk about today. I mean, is it any different from any other day on the best show here in the country? Of course not. By the way, let's get a little update from Polly. You know, our artificial intelligence friend Polly. Her predicted outcome for today of the next Canadian federal election. Polly sees a 1.4% chance of a Liberal majority, a 56.9% chance of a Liberal minority, a 40.3% chance of a Conservative minority, and a 0.1% chance of a Conservative majority. All right, that's the latest update. So things have moved with Polly a little bit. But let's talk about something a little closer to home here in the province of Ontario. Big news for us here in Ontario this morning. The details of the Ford government's vaccine passport system. Yesterday afternoon, Health Minister Christine Elliott held a press conference to announce what the vaccine passport is going to look like and how it will work when it goes into effect in this province on September 22nd, by the way. That's next Wednesday, September 22nd. Here's what you need to know. Proof of vaccination status is going to be required to eat indoors at restaurants and bars, to enter a gym, movie theater, sporting venue, or concert, and to use a large meeting and event space. Ontario residents will need to either print or download their second dose receipt from the government website until an enhanced certificate becomes available on October 22nd. New rules will not impact children under the age of 12 who are not yet eligible for the vaccine. In order to enter a vaccine-mandated business, patrons will have to provide proof of their status and provide identification at the door. All your standard ID will work, so don't panic. Examples include citizenship card, driver's license, government-issued identification card, including a health card, an Indian status card or Indigenous membership card, a passport, or a permanent resident card. Doesn't necessarily have to be photo ID, by the way, but you will need to convince the person screening your entry that you are the person who holds the vaccine receipt. Won't that be fun? You come in with photo ID, you're going to have to convince the person. Isn't that person going to have a great time? Well, I'm not. How do I know this is actually you, Derek? This is just your birth certificate. How do I know you're Derek Fage with your birth certificate? There's no photo ID. Oh, my goodness. There's going to be a whole bunch of exemptions to the vaccine certificate as well. Isn't as strict as the one they have in Quebec. So where you need proof of vaccination in Ontario. Let's go through this quickly, okay? Restaurants and bars, excluding outdoor patios. Nightclubs, including outdoor areas, by the way, in the night for nightclubs. Meeting and event spaces such as banquet halls and conference convention centers. Facilities used for sports and fitness activities and personal fitness training such as gyms, fitness, and recreational facilities, with the exception of youth recreational sport. Also, sporting events, indoor areas of water parks, indoor areas of commercial film and TV productions with studio audiences. We should get a studio audience, by the way, David. That'd be a lot of fun. Casinos, bingo halls, and gaming establishments, concerts, music festivals, theaters and cinemas, strip clubs, bathhouses, and sex clubs. We still have bathhouses and sex clubs in Ontario? David and I were, actually, this is kind of a good thing. David and I felt kind of good about it. We weren't even sure if strip clubs were open yet, and we both thought to ourselves, oh, that's probably a good thing that we don't know they're open yet. And lastly, racing venues, where you won't need proof of vaccination in Ontario. At no time will anyone be prevented from accessing necessary medical care, food from grocery stores, basic medical supplies or other essentials, voting in upcoming federal election, outdoor settings, including patios, with the exception of outdoor nightclub spaces, takeaway and delivery services from restaurants and bars, retail shopping, salons and barbershops, banks, places of worship, and to access an outdoor area that can only be accessed through an indoor route, depending on which one you prefer. If you are not vaccinated because of a medical condition, you will need a signed doctor's note explaining your medical exemption to enter places where the passport is required. Enforcement of the vaccine passport has been left entirely up to businesses. Well, thank you on behalf of all businesses. All businesses today are saying, well, thanks so much for giving us that. We appreciate that. We're going to have a reaction to that from the president of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, Rocco Rossi. Is going to be joining us a little bit later on in the show. Of course, we're also going to be talking about the election, 5 days to go. And this is the place for your political fix. Kate Harrison and Susan Smith will join us after the 9:30 news. We're going to do our best to figure out who's going to win this thing. Polly has a 100% success rate. Let me remind you, And right now, she's got a 56.9% chance of a Trudeau minority. Glad we spent that $600 million plus on this thing. Lots of changes coming. During the talkback hour, I want to hear from you on the federal race. Pretty simple question today. You're worried at all about the direction the country is heading? Do you feel good about your options? Today's required reading, by the way. Jesse Snyder in the newspaper today. Here's the headline and the byline. Where is our economic recovery plan? We talked about this yesterday. Parties focus on spending, forgets aim of how to grow the economy. There it is right there. There's your headline this morning for those of you watching on Rogers TV. There you have it. Oh, my goodness. And you see Norm Macdonald on the front page today, of course, as well. Great Canadian comedian. Unfortunately, we lost Norm. We're actually going to wrap up the opening of this segment with some of Norm. I was watching some of his highlights last night. Just on Saturday Night Live, fantastic. Great stand-up stuff. Sitting down. He has, you know what Norm was so good at? He had some of the longest jokes in the history of joke telling. And you just sat and you waited. And it was like a 4-minute joke, right? And you knew it was going to be a great punchline coming in the end. All right, let's switch gears for a moment. Also coming up next, as a matter of fact, we're going to continue on a conversation we started yesterday with Councillor Carol Ann Meehan about problem truck traffic in Ottawa. As she called in during the talkback hour, we encourage you to also call in the talkback hour. We've got lots to talk about, 750-1310 after the 10 o'clock news. Carol Ann saying that this is a result of a failure of planning and the trucks need to be rerouted out of the village of Manotick. Councillor Scott Moffatt is the co-chair of the city's planning committee. He sees things a little differently. It was quite nice because, they're all listening to this show. We know City Council listens to this show because they want to know what's happening, right? It's the pulse of the people. They listen to this show in particular to find out what the pulse of the people is. So there they were listening. And we had some back and forth on the Twitter, as my mom would call it. Actually, she calls it the internet and then the Twitter. On the internet, Ricky, that's what she calls me, Derek Fage here, by the way, filling in for Rob Snow. Ricky, I was on the internet on Twitter, or as I was on the internet on Facebook. So there was a bit of a back and forth. Councillor Scott Moffatt, as I said, co-chair of the planning committee, sees things a little differently. It all comes down to the number of bridges over the Rideau River in the city's south end. There may be no other option. But to have these trucks passing through Manotick for the time being, not a lot of people happy about it. So Scott Moffatt, Councillor Moffatt, going to join us to break it down for you next. And of course, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, you just saw that on the front of the Ottawa Citizen, the edition of the National Post and the Ottawa Citizen. The sad news this morning, and many of us were talking about it throughout the evening last night. And as I said, I was looking at some of his stand-up and some of his interviews. Conan O'Brien interviews with Norm. You look them up. There's some great ones. Canadian comedy icon Norm Macdonald has died at the age of 61 after a long private battle with cancer. We're going to leave you, by the way, because we're talking election, right? Because we're talking election. We're going to be talking about it extensively, of course, for the next few days as we lead up to Monday's, hopefully, results later on in the evening. It could take into of course, late into Tuesday to get those results. But we're going to leave you with a clip of Norm discussing Canadian elections back in 2019 because I think we could all use a laugh about the absurdity of politics right now.
Hey, big election coming up and coming this fall. And I'll tell you, now that I'm in the United States, I really miss living in Canada during election time, especially. On account of, in Canada, this is the difference in elections in America and Canada, is elections in America mean something. You vote for the wrong mother, the world blows up. I don't need that on my hands. Whereas Canada, it's always like, well, what's your view on the bridge? I say keep as it is. I don't think they need to clean that up. That's fine. It was easy when I was young to vote because it was simply, you just didn't vote for the French guy. It couldn't have been an easier choice. As a matter of fact, I almost feel like coming back this fall just as an homage to my late father and not vote for Trudeau. My dad did not like Trudeau. Trudeau was my hero, though. I loved him, And since I've come back, I've been watching the news and everything. I've been seeing Justin, and I thought, by God, this Justin kid, he must be brilliant because his father was Pierre Elliott Trudeau. But then I forgot, he's got a mother.
So the Birth of Absinthe was 2002, I think, 2003, and I was working at Urban Bistro, happily, where Allium is now. And then the space where Holland Cafe was came up. It's on the corner of Spencer and Holland. And I spoke to the landlord, and there's a lot of interest from a lot of other people, but he and I just, got along super well, and he put a lot of faith in me. So Carmen Turner is his name. He gave me the lease to the place and really pretty much gave me all the equipment in the place. So I was really lucky. I've been really lucky with landlords that way, actually, both my current landlord and Carmen Turner. Because if there hadn't been Carmen Turner, there wouldn't have been Absinthe. So we were there for a few years and just sort of outgrew the place. And then now we're here. It's obviously been tough, and it's been tough for everyone. I mean, that's been the big democratic sweep of in restaurants and the hospitality and the arts that we were talking about earlier. It's like everybody's been impacted pretty much the same. From everybody that I talked to, we're down 80%. We're climbing out now. I think one of the saddest things is everybody, we went down to 2 employees from 25. And we're now at 4, and we're bringing 2 new people on this week, so we'll be at 6. So it's little steps. So it's been tough. It's I've got the most expensive clubhouse ever here, because some days you come and you don't do any business, but you're here. But I'm grateful for what I do have. I think everybody's optimistic now, not necessarily just about the vaccine, but about the vaccine, spring, being able to be outside. I think you're going to see a lot of pop-up things happen in parking lots and on sidewalks and like that, rather than being actually inside somebody's commerce. I think we'd like to take it outside. I know my staff would. My staff like the outdoors now, all of a sudden, all 4 of us. 6 soon. We'll be doing some business in the patio in the parking lot, and we have a patio out front. And I hope other restaurants and stores will do the same. I hope that they take advantage of the sidewalk and doing sort of, guerrilla marketing and stuff like that, and really shaking it up a bit. You can find us at Absinthe Cafe at 1208 Wellington Street West in Hintonburg. And you can find us online at absinthecafe.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derek Fage here from Rogers TV, filling in for Rob all week long. And boy, oh boy, did we get some calls about this yesterday. Right? We were talking about it in general, so, how do you feel the city is, is taking care of your tax dollars, spending your tax money. But we started off with this story. We set it up with this story about the Manotick Community Association. They're so fed up with the inaction of the city on an issue that was important to their neighborhood. They went out and they did their own study and report on the issue that they sent to the area councillor. It had to do with heavy traffic in the village of Manotick, where a local association said they've counted nearly 90 heavy construction trucks per hour rumbling through the residential streets on their way to a massive housing development in parts of Barrhaven. We're pitting Manotick versus Barrhaven. This should be a good fight, folks. Even after all this, the city doesn't seem to have any interest in reviewing the permitted trucking route that sees the 89 construction vehicles per hour weaving their way down Manotick's main street. So Carol Ann Meehan called in yesterday during the talkback hour because I said, the city council listens to the show. They want to know the pulse of their citizens. And her first tweet was, massive warehouses and trucks through Ottawa need serious solutions. The once quiet village of Manotick is now on a truck route. Take a listen. Do you want this in your community? And Scott Moffatt, city councillor for Rideau-Goulbourn, chimed in just to clarify this tweet. This is not a new truck route. And the desire from the community is that Bridge Street not be a truck route and that all of these trucks use the Vimy Memorial Bridge instead. Further, majority of these trucks are not e-commerce related. Well, guess what? Now we get to hear from Scott himself on the show this morning, city councillor for Rideau-Goulbourn. Scott, how are you today?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great, thanks. So give us a little bit of the history behind this, Scott, because this isn't the first time that this issue's been brought up.
No. Well, how long's your show?
So you've got 7 minutes, Scott.
So this is something has been around for decades. In fact, a resident of Manotick spoke to me yesterday about an accident that occurred on Bridge Street or near Bridge Street back in the 1970s and 1980s. Knowing that the truck issue was an issue then. I think over the years you had the construction of the Highway 416 at Bankfield with that interchange there, with the straight line out to Boundary Road. We always knew there was some through traffic, but I think what we're seeing more recently is more on the construction side. And the videos actually show that. If you watch the videos produced by the community and what was shared online.
Yeah, the types of trucks are certainly more along the construction trucks.
That's right. If there's 10 trucks in that video, 9 of them are construction related. So where's that coming from, right? That's the growth related. That's the south end growth in Barrhaven, Riverside South, and in Manotick and Richmond and elsewhere. I mean, there's growth happening, and they're using this way to get through. The difficulty we have is this whole bigger truck route network situation. This has kind of been the issue all along. The Memorial Bridge was not built to solve Manotick's problem, but was seen as an opportunity to address it.
Right.
The issue is when you go east from the Memorial Bridge, you hit dead ends of truck routes. We have in recent years added Limebank as a restricted load truck route, so it's good most of the year, and that can get you all the way up from Mitch Owens. You have River Road all the way up from Mitch Owens, but those are both restricted load truck routes. And then Earl Armstrong ends, and it's not a truck route after that.
Right.
So any trucks being generated from, let's say, Albion, Power Road, Rideau Road, that part of town, the roof truss companies down along Bank Street, in order for them to get across town over into Barrhaven, where a lot of the growth is happening, they use Bridge Street.
Well, it begs the question, Scott. Then is this due to poor planning? I mean, if you're going to plan brand new developments, and I'll go back to this, and David and I have talked about it. So many people have talked about it. Should we be talking and putting in a ring road in this city?
Well, a ring road. I mean, where are you going to put it? Right? You only have so many river crossings. Are you going to light up cars and all of a sudden make it a 4-lane highway through the edge of cars?
Well, I don't know. It may be.
I mean, based on what we saw with the opposition to trucks in the North Core area with that proposed warehouse, I don't exactly think that there's a bunch of communities out there that are readily looking to accept new truck traffic. So I'm not trying to solve a problem by creating a problem for someone else.
Well, yeah, I understand. But, I mean, to solve a problem, sometimes you do need to cheese off somebody, right? That's what leadership's about.
Well, no, leadership is actually about getting things done by working collaboratively with others, not just highlighting issues and just hoping for the best. And I think that's really what's been happening over the years, is that people have hoped for the best. I mean, there's been motions brought forward to council before about banning trucks from Manotick. It was voted down 22-2. I'm not going to bring forward the same motion all of a sudden expect it.
No, I agree, Scott. I agree 100%. But we have to we have to find solutions. I don't have the solution myself. Obviously, the citizens are frustrated.
Exactly. And what we've been trying to do, and I try to look at things about could there be some short-term wins, and we've made improvements along Bridge Street over the years with adding signals and trying to prioritize more local traffic with the Van Lee extension, different things like that. And my predecessor, Glenn Brooks, had worked on a lot of this stuff himself as well.
Right.
So this isn't just something that is isolated to one councillor. This has been a long-standing issue back prior to amalgamation even as well. So a lot of people have been looking at this as to how to fix it. And we have these long-term plans, and we just need to firm up those long-term plans. The Earl Armstrong extension out to 2031 doesn't really solve anything in the short term. So we have the Hard Rock Casino coming in. Is that an opportunity to build that Earl Armstrong extension sooner? Of course it is. But we have to focus on that. And so when we do the Transportation Master Plan, we need to be looking at that. The other part is, and we try to build this into the Manitouk Secondary Plan, looking at Bridge Street not as a commuter road, but actually as another main street.
Right.
And you kind of close it in. You redesign it to be a bit more of a main street. We've done that with Manitouk Main Street. We've closed it in. We've added parking. We've put a pedestrian crosswalk in. And the traveled speeds have shot down from what they were before.
No, I think there's been a good job. I just say, I mentioned off the top, it's just when we plan some of these developments, it just seems there's too many missing pieces so often, Scott.
Well, and the issue is we're talking about roads in the middle of nowhere. That's what's needed. In order to fix the truck route network, you have to build roads in the middle of nowhere. And the thing is, most taxpayers and most councillors don't want to do that. And they certainly don't want to do that if what the result is going to be is that a bunch more trucks are going to come through their community. So the leadership doesn't just have to come from Manitouk. It has to come from beyond Manitouk.
Oh, I agree 100%.
So I need, when you have a 4-lane hunt club, 6 lanes in some area, and it's being reduced in speed when there's no one around it, that's a roadblock. That's an impediment for traffic. So they're going to find other ways to go. We push them out of the communities we don't want them in, and then we just don't care where they go.
You're right. You're right. It ends up to be, all of a sudden it's the problem of more rural communities, right? Who've actually moved out into those areas to get away from traffic, and then we turn our attention to them and say, well, you know what, the majority of people in Ottawa would rather see it out there than within the city limits. And
it's an out of sight, out of mind thing. I even went to the Ottawa Hospital.
Sure.
Someone said put the Ottawa Hospital at Hunt Club Road, Hunt Club and Greenbank. There's no one there. Yeah, it's just the Greenbelt. That's what people do, right? They just try to push issues out to the outer rim and expect no one to actually be impacted. Well,
even the Tunney's Pasture idea, which, great spot. I agree. There's lots of land there and so forth. But where are emergency vehicles going to go out there? They have very little access to the highways, to the major arteries to get in and out when it comes to emergencies. Is it a great spot? Sure, but we have to think beyond the fact that there's lots of land there, and that in the Hunt Club area is the same thing.
Exactly. So ultimately, we have these issues, and I'm not looking just for someone to come out and highlight the issues. We know the issues, but we need collaboration on results, on solutions. And I don't need to fight against someone who maybe doesn't want trucks in their community, but is highlighting an issue in another community. I need that person to be collaborative on that approach, so that I'm not just shifting cars or trucks from Manitouk to cars or from Manitouk to Riverside South, but we're saying, hey, listen, Manitouk seems to be taking its fair share.
Yeah.
And we spread this out. And how do we do that? Well, we did the line bank piece, but it's not enough, so we need more.
I'll end with this, Scott, I agree with you. There has to be more collaboration. I don't know what has happened with City Council recently, especially in the last couple of years, but there just seems to it seems to be a battle constantly. And there has to be more collaboration. It's different levels of government, especially we're going through a pandemic and the attacks seem to be getting greater and greater. Scott, I've run out of time, but I always appreciate your honesty and appreciate you joining us this morning. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. That's Scott Moffatt, City Councillor for Rideau-Goulbourn. Coming up after the break. Yes, we're going to talk some more election. Kate Harrison, Vice Chair of Summa Strategies, and Susan Smith, Principal at Bluesky Strategy Group. Joining me, this is Derek Fage filling in for Rob Snow on Rogers TV and City News.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, September 15th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 18 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. Elections Canada says more than 1 million people have applied to vote by mail, many because they don't want to vote in person on Election Day Monday due to the pandemic. More than half have already returned their ballots. They will be counted starting on Tuesday. The higher than usual number of mail-in ballots could delay results in some ridings. Ontario Science Advisory Group estimates tens of thousands of people in the province are suffering from what is called the long COVID. It says a conservative estimate suggests between 57,000 and 78,000 people in Ontario are currently still experiencing symptoms weeks or even months after they had COVID-19. The Ontario Science Advisory Table says the most common of the more than 200 different symptoms include fatigue, shortness of breath, general pain or discomfort, anxiety, and depression. It cost you 4.1% more to live last month compared to 1 year ago. StatsCan says the price of gasoline, food, and housing all went up, sending your cost to the highest increase since March of 2003. If you just look at housing costs, that's the biggest jump since September of 1987. City News Time, 9:33. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derek Fage here from Rogers TV, filling in for Rob all week long. It is time for your political fix. I should mention Justin Trudeau, by the way, had some big guns join him last night in Brampton. Yeah, he had a rally in Brampton. Among the attendees was former Mississauga Mayor Hazel McCallion. You know Hazel? She was mayor there for, I don't know, how long, like 100 years. Unbelievable. Shortly, by the way, after getting off stage at the rally on Tuesday night, Hazel said Trudeau should not have called an election during the COVID-19 pandemic. You know what? I appreciate her honesty. A little bit of a blow there, but this is her quote. I think it's unfortunate there was an election called during the pandemic. I don't agree with that. I think the government should be concentrating on recovering, getting people back to work. Governments have been saying stay at home, stay away of getting into groups. And then an election is called, which brings people together in groups. Hazel is correct. Jean Chrétien was there as well, by the way, at 87 years old. Hazel now 100 years old. Let's talk more politics because, as I said, it's time for the political fix. We are joined by Kate Harrison, Vice Chair of Summa Strategies. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning, Derek.
Great to have you here. And Geoff Turner, Vice President of Bluesky Strategy Group. Welcome, Geoff. Great to have you.
Thanks, Derek. Glad to be here.
We're 5 days out. 5 days out. Things are getting a little uglier. Let's talk, first of all, what is the focus for the three main party leaders in their last few days on the campaign trail? I'll start with you, Kate. What do you think the main focus should be of each leader right now?
Well, to some degree, all of the parties are really focused on the same thing right now, and that's getting out their vote. So the window has closed for identifying who your supporters are, and now it is entirely about convincing them, if they didn't already show up during the advance polls, and it sounds like many voters did, trying to get them out on election day. So all of the parties are focused on that, and all the parties are focused right now on their end game appeal. So for the 35-ish% of people that still haven't made up their mind, all of the parties are kind of crafting their best elevator pitch to make sure that they try and woo those undecided supporters to their side. So for Justin Trudeau, I think really the key is to try and keep leaning into the importance of securing a progressive agenda, trying to appeal to NDP voters who may be a bit on the fence about whether or not they want to park their vote with Justin Trudeau for a third time. And for the Conservatives, it's going to be about trying to motivate I would say young millennial families to show up at the ballot box in some key suburban areas in Toronto, mainland BC, and a few other regions. We've seen a couple announcements from the Conservatives really geared towards parents and families, and I think that that's a direct appeal to try and pull them out as well come Election Day.
Geoff, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think the main focus should be? And, I said three main parties, but, let's be honest, Jagmeet Singh, I don't think has a hope here. So let's just talk about Trudeau and O'Toole in particular.
Sure, I certainly agree with Kate on the party machinery switching from identification to what we call get out the vote, and that's happening now, and we'll reach a crescendo on Monday following, actually that work started last weekend with the advance polls. In terms of the leaders themselves, though, of course, they're still going to be crisscrossing the country, doing their events, and I think the focus is very much on contrast. We're seeing that coming out this week. We see all parties really stepping up the what we euphemistically call contrast. Others are calling negative campaigning. Mr. O'Toole's been out strong, the last 3 days with sort of 20-minute screeds ad hominem against the Prime Minister. Prime Minister's out trying to draw strong contrast with Conservatives and NDPs. For example, on the NDP side, the Liberals have a far more real and ambitious climate change plan, and he's trying to tell voters that the NDP won't live up to what they're promising on that, and that on the other side, the Conservatives don't have a strong enough plan in a number of areas. And for the families, a quick note, what are you trying to focus on besides the personal or leadership contrast? It's those few key issues, the elevator pitches, Kate says. And for the Liberal folks, that's going to be things like childcare, $10 a day childcare. That's a significant difference from the Conservative offering, which is a small tax credit for a limited number of families. Mm-hmm. And things like climate change, where the plan on the Conservative side is very unambitious and returns us to the 2015, pre-2015 sort of way of dealing with climate change. I don't think Canadians are there either. So continue to see that contrast. And the last point I'll make is a lot of that isn't necessarily about pulling in new votes. It will hopefully help with some people making up their final decision, but it is also about motivating your base and motivating those people that you've identified to come out and vote on Election Day, because I think there's a lot of forces that are dragging people down that they may not be enthusiastic about going. So you have to push in some cases to get people to go to the polls.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest in my next question, because I think a lot of people in the media dismiss the PPC, and I was one of them. But all the big pollsters now have them somewhere between 6% and 8% nationally. John Ibbetson's column about the party in the Globe today had the progressive Twitter sphere in a complete, absolute tizzy yesterday afternoon. They're now the fourth place national party, well above the flailing Greens. According to the CBC, the PPC likely cost the Conservatives 7 seats in the House of Commons by splitting the vote. 6 seats went to the Liberals, 1 to the NDP. With polls suggesting the PPC support is now well above the 1.6% of the vote it got last time, its impact could be even greater. So, Kate, what do you make of PPC's popularity? What does that say about the state of politics in Canada right now?
Sure. It's important not to be dismissive of the sentiment and the undercurrent of PPC support. Yeah. This is a group of people that many of whom have not been political before, many of whom are kind of taking up the PPC banner out of protest, not so much out of partisanship. It really is a collection of previous supporters from other political parties, for those that have been involved in politics. It's not just drawing from Conservatives. They are really drawing from a bunch of different viewpoints and ideologies. So I don't think that the sentiment should be ignored because that still makes up a sizable portion of the electorate. I am, however, doubtful that the PPC support as it is going to translate into seats in the House of Commons and a spoiler on Election Day. A lot of their support is spread out. If there are pockets of PPC support, that tends to be in areas where Conservatives overperform by 20, 30 points. So, if they have won a riding with, let's say, 50% of the vote, are they going to be too upset if they only win it with 40% this time? Perhaps not. So I am doubtful that because of the kind of sporadic and haphazard nature of the party machinery behind the PPC, I'm doubtful that they will be able to pull that off into an organized get-out-the-vote effort. But we definitely should be taking seriously the sentiment there and trying not to put gasoline on that fire. And I think that Justin Trudeau, to be frank, has played a very big role in that with his dismissiveness of people that are vaccine hesitant or vaccine refusers.
Yeah, I agree with that because, are you a leader for all Canadians or not? You may disagree with the fact that they don't believe in the vaccine and so forth, but you can't necessarily say, you know what, they don't belong in my Canada, and then use it as an attack against Aaron O'Toole, saying, but they do belong in Aaron O'Toole's Canada. I just think, again, regardless of personal opinion, if you're the leader of a country, you're there to lead all Canadians. Geoff, what do you make of the gains for the PPC?
Well, I'll agree certainly with Kate. I think the PPC is an amalgam of a bunch of different anger and protest movements, and I think the party. Let's not forget, was really nowhere until earlier this summer, as vaccines became prevalent and as they were being uptaken by the population. And really, you saw Maxime Bernier and Randy Hillier and all these other sort of malcontents making their way into that anti-vaccine movement to try to gain attention. And it's worked, hasn't it? So, I think they really have found through their sort of pliable ethics and pliable support bases that they can take advantage of this movement that is full of people that may not. The other thing I'll agree with Kate on, I think, is it does draw their voters, and we'll see how many of those voters do come on Election Day. That'll be the truest test of their support, of course. But those voters are coming from principally, in my opinion, people who may not have voted either regularly or at all, right? Who are generally alienated from the system or don't feel that their vote obviously reflects their priorities. I think there is a role for parties to absorb that and to present that image. I think the challenge with this party is it really is focusing on some really scary stuff. And in terms of the Prime Minister, just the conversation we were having just before my turn here, I come back to the overwhelming majority of Canadians are done with this. We need to get through this pandemic. The vaccines were our hope all along. And There is a difference. I want to draw the strong difference between those who are hesitant, who are encountering barriers, who have questions or are unsure, and then there's the folks who are just outright frankly antisocial. And I think there's a big difference between those folks, and we can't let, just like in any other way in our society, we can't let 10% of people who don't want to follow what's good for society and protects their neighbors and friends, we can't let them derail this whole thing for the rest of us. And that's not through a matter of compulsion. It's through tools that allow the incentive to go and get that vaccine, that keep people safe on a plane or a train or in a restaurant. It's about keeping people safe, and I don't think you can, you have to draw a strong line there, because the principal duty of a leader in our governments is to keep people safe, healthy, and prosperous. And that is being held back by this sort of 10%, 8%.
Yeah, for sure. And the there's also the other group that doesn't get mentioned very often, outside of, health reasons, is we have groups of people and communities, minority communities for the most part, that English is their second language. There's a difficult time reaching out to them to give them a better understanding. They have a lack of trust in government for many different reasons, including, the governments that they've come from. So I think we have to keep in mind that. That's why I think Justin Trudeau, for his part, I think I don't think he's going to change, what he's been saying and what his narrative is, but I think he's definitely isolating a large group of people that he shouldn't be as the leader of a major party, and could be the prime minister of this country yet again come Monday. We're going to take a quick break because we've got lots more to talk about when it comes to this 44th election coming up in 5 days on Monday. We'll be back with Kate Harrison and Geoff Turner right after this. This is Derek Fage filling in for Rob Snow on Rogers TV and City News.
I always knew I was going to own my own business, and I've always wanted to have a store. And I sort of figured when the right concept came together at the right time, I would move forward with that plan. And so through doing some environmental initiatives in the restaurant group that I was with prior to opening this store, it just triggered my path towards being more environmentally conscientious and wanting to make more of a difference, and hopefully encouraging, inspiring other people to want to do the same, at which point the idea for All Eco was born. I have some really fun products. I have a really wide spectrum of products. So the things we look for in terms of qualifying products are sustainably made, upcycled, recycled, zero waste, all natural, no harmful chemicals to the environment or to our bodies. We have fun stuff, so really clean burning candles, lots of really natural body care and skin care. I put a real emphasis on Canadian products. I really try to support up and comers, and I always source Canada first. The refill bar is really important to me. It's really huge. I think that's been exciting as well, because I thought it was going to be a real process in convincing people that this is a better way to go. And actually it was just right away there was a built-in affinity towards doing refill, which has been great. We closed, I think, we were closed down by before the second week of March. Just didn't feel we could comfortably or confidently stay open, even though I do sell essential products, in terms of the cleaning. But we just didn't feel we could make a safe space for ourselves or our customers at that time, and especially with the information we had at the time. So we did close our doors, at which point I did not have a website, because that was I hadn't even scheduled myself to have a website at that point. So that was sort of full speed moving towards that and trying to drive the business, at the same time still get myself on the map because I was so new. So during that time, as we were building the website, we were still doing a lot of video shopping and private shopping, online shopping, online phone, text. Any way I could do business, I was doing it. And there was really a nice show of support for my business during that time, which was really, really encouraging. And now, we are fully set up online too.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News. 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derek Fage here, filling in for Rob all week long. Yes, we are back with your political fix, joined by Kate Harrison, Vice Chair of Summa Strategies, and Geoff Turner, Vice President of Bluesky Strategy Group. And we're going to narrow this down just a little bit more and get into some specifics. And Kate, I'll start with you on this one. What do you think the Conservatives need to do to win this election?
Big question. I think the focus really does need to be on the positive and what the Conservatives are going to put on the table to actually attract new voters into the party. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about the tone shift in this campaign. We can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
For the Conservatives, it is really important that this be a balance, right? Because if they go too hard on the negative side, it plays to a really familiar Achilles heel for Conservatives that, we're a bunch of grumpy meanies. So there needs to be a balance there with the positive. For the last 3 weeks prior to this one, I would argue Erin O'Toole was actually the most positive leader that was out there. It was all about policy. It was all about talking about how he's a new kind of Conservative leader. Now we're seeing that pitch change, and I think there's a few reasons for that. A, it's a very close race.
Yeah.
B, it's important to remind people of the mistakes that Trudeau has made along the way and tap into that really key frustration that a lot of voters are still bringing up at the doors, which is, why on earth are we having this election in the first place? So I think by drawing that contrast and calling into question the judgment there that the Prime Minister had to pull the plug on his own government, the Conservatives are really tapping into the sentiment that they're hearing at the doors, that people are frustrated by the fact that this is happening at all.
Geoff, I wonder, do you believe this may be in response to Justin Trudeau turning on the attacks quite a bit? I go back to on Sunday of last week when he had his rally in Oakville, and he really went on the attack. And then the next day, it seemed that Erin O'Toole suddenly turned from that, being sort of very relaxed and calm demeanor and not going after Trudeau too much on the personal side, and all of a sudden that completely switched.
Well, it did seem to switch, didn't it? And like lots of politicians before him, the opening statement was, I'm the most positive one, and I want to talk about my positive plan, but let me tell you about how terrible my opponent is.
Yeah.
So lots of eye rolls if you watch those press conferences. I think I'll actually repeat more or less what the Prime Minister is saying about this. I see, and maybe I'm biased, but I see critiques and criticism of Mr. O'Toole's leadership, of Mr. O'Toole's deals with people that got him where he is, of the types of issues that are clear contrasts for what Canadians, at least Canadians who may vote Liberal, want to believe are sort of true in our society and going forward. Things, of course, like assault weapons and public health care, not to spin off into those subjects. As I see Mr. O'Toole, especially in these last 2 days, it's personality, it's calling him names, it's talking about him as, somebody that most Canadians wouldn't like in their normal life. And listen, I think that actually goes back to our previous conversation. I think the new angry O'Toole is a move to shore up the angry end of his base, which the Conservatives have cultivated for decades and are now at risk of moving to the purple team in some cases. So I think that's related, but I think it's also, as I said earlier, a matter of contrast. And the thing I would say, I don't have a view to the Conservative strategy in polling, but this is. If you already very much dislike the Prime Minister, if you've been on the team of not liking him this whole time, that's not going to change. And I think that's more, again, back to my earlier point, motivating the base, motivating the people who are already angry, who are already made up their minds to get out and work. Campaigns run on thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of volunteers on election day, especially in every part of this country. You need to get people to come and help you. You need to get people to go out and vote. And often these messages are tailored at people who have already made up their minds rather than trying to change people's minds.
There is a dynamic I just want to point out that exists now, though, that did not exist in 2019 and 2015 when the Conservatives ran negative, really, in my opinion, at the exclusion of putting anything positive in the window. And that dynamic now is that people are kind of annoyed by Justin Trudeau. They're annoyed about his decision to run this election. And I think the bloom is off the rose. He is the only leader who has had their personal popularity decline throughout the course of the campaign. And again, when the ballot box question is about you, that's usually a bad thing. I point to Kathleen Wynne. That was an example. It was a referendum on her leadership. We all know how that turned out in Ontario in 2018. I think that because the Liberals have failed to frame this election in a way that resonates with voters and have failed to provide that ballot box question, this is now quickly becoming a referendum on Justin Trudeau's leadership, and that's why you're seeing Erin O'Toole lean into that type of messaging at this stage.
Geoff, I believe, Kate, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you mentioned it earlier. According to Abacus data, 35% of voters are still undecided. Is that a big number, Geoff? Is 35? Because to me, that sounds like a pretty big number of undecided voters. Is this normal for 5 days before an election?
Kate referenced the stat, and she may wish to follow up. I'll just answer you quickly to say that if you consider that the typical voting turnout in Canada hovers around somewhere between 65 and 75% in a given election, it's not unusual that the other 30% of people will tell a pollster that they are undecided, because it's that sort of social bias of not telling them they're not going to vote, right? That they aren't interested in voting. So I think there's always a high number of undecideds, and it actually usually reflects less about a decision and more about a motivation to vote or seeing themselves in any of the particular political party. But I'll give Kate some she may be more familiar with the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. And I think that Geoff makes a good point that, it's not an unusual number. I am a bit worried. If I'm the incumbent government, I am a little bit worried about that number, because I do think that being undecided at this particular point in the race is a pretty good indication that you are unlikely to show up on Election Day, especially when you consider that the stakes are not very clear. And what the Conservatives have done, I think, for a lot of voters is make it a palatable option to have the Conservatives come in. The movement towards kind of this anybody but Conservative, sentiment is not there as it has been in years past. You also have a strong leader in Jagmeet Singh, still the most well-liked leader. If today's polls are to be believed, he may be on a bit of an upswing. So all of those factors, I think, play into how motivated or not people actually are to show up. And that is the real question that very few people can answer at this stage. How motivated? We know the Conservative vote is actually quite motivated. How motivated is that Liberal vote? Are those orange-red switchers actually going to show up and vote for Justin Trudeau a third time? Are they going to be okay with an Erin O'Toole outcome and maybe stay home? Are they going to park their vote with Singh or Annamie Paul? These are all questions it's really hard to answer, because getting at that voter motivation is a really difficult thing, even with public opinion data.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what voter turnout is going to be. I fear that it's not going to be a great voter turnout, but, the advance polls show it's looked pretty good, and we'll see how many mail-in votes. Kate and Geoff, thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate hearing from you today.
Thanks to you both.
Great to be with both of you.
Thank you. That's Kate Harrison, Vice Chair of Summa Strategies, and Geoff Turner, Vice President of Bluesky Strategy Group. I should also mention, as before we go to break here, Main Street Research have their Ontario scoreboard, and today their Ontario scoreboard showing 76 seats for the Liberals, 36 for the Conservatives, 8 for the NDP, and 1 for the Green Party. So just some information there that, if that's what it looks like in Ontario, it's almost a done deal. Now, again, it's advance polls, and they can change quite quickly. Coming up after the break is the Talkback Hour. That's right. We want to hear from you. We can continue some of that discussion from yesterday. How do you feel the city is spending your tax dollars? We also want to talk about, the fact people are worried about the direction the country is heading in. Are you personally worried about the direction the country is heading in as we have, 5 days to go before the vote? And, how are we going to get ourselves out of this debt? Nobody is talking about it. Again, I'll reference your required reading today. Jesse Snyder, where is our economic recovery plan? That is the headline. And the byline, parties focus on spending, forgets aim of how to grow the economy. No one's talking about this, but we'll talk about it here on this show with you. 750-1310 is our number. Derek Fage here filling in for Rob Snow on Rogers TV and City News.
is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, September 15th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 18 degrees. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Federal party leaders are hitting the campaign trail with just days before you cast your ballot in the election in the regular voting day. City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney with more.
Party leaders continue to make their final pushes to Canadians to secure their votes, with NDP leader Jagmeet Singh trying to focus on long-term care, but having to address a controversy on 2 candidates dropping out over tweets that have been criticized as anti-Semitic. A Toronto candidate had tweeted about COVID vaccines in the U.S. going to Israel. Another in Nova Scotia asked if Auschwitz was a real place. Singh was asked what it says about his leadership that he didn't dump the candidates, rather they made the choice to drop out.
These candidates made a decision to leave. I think that was the right decision. I want to be very clear. Their comments were completely wrong and have no place in our party.
Meanwhile, Liberal leader Justin Trudeau is starting his day off with a campaign stop in Halifax, and Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole is spending his day in Quebec. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News time at 10:02. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
It will be a quieter weather day overall today after that early morning thunderstorm activity. It was 23 degrees very early this morning. That's our high for the day. For the rest of the day, we'll sit at about 21. The temperature will drop a little bit around sunrise. Tonight, mainly clear and 10, and tomorrow, sun and cloud, 25. For today, already reached our high, 23.
And right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, 18 degrees. You don't need anyone telling you that everything costs more in August, from groceries to gas. Last month in Ottawa, StatsCan says the rate was 4.8% higher in August this year than August last year. Nationally, that rate was 4.1%. It is the largest year-over-year inflation increase since March of 2003.
August jump compares with a gain of 3.7% in July and was mostly fueled by higher gasoline and housing prices. Gasoline prices rose 32.5% on a year-over-year basis. Without them, Statistics Canada says the annual inflation figure would have come in at 3.2%. CIBC senior economist Royce Mendez says the annual inflation rate is likely to fall with the changing of the seasons, partly because the fourth wave of COVID-19 is creating a headwind for the service sector. Don Kelly, The Canadian Press.
City News time at 10:04. The idea of a booster shot of COVID vaccine is being studied in several places, including in Israel, where there has been significant data that supports the effectiveness of a booster shot.
A new study on the staff of Sheba Medical Center here in Israel shows the COVID-19 booster vaccine produces 10 times more antibodies than those after the second shot. That means the booster may provide much longer protection than the 5 to 8 month window after 2 shots. A larger study needed to confirm these preliminary results. Israel drove down infections and hospitalizations by giving the booster to everyone over 12, but that data from August left out of the Lancet Medical Journal's review, concluding there's no evidence to support a booster for the general population. Jordana Miller, ABC News, Jerusalem.
The Special Investigations Unit has stopped the look into Ottawa police and a man with a broken wrist. It has determined the broken wrist the 24-year-old man from Ottawa had happened before his arrest on July 17th on Murray Street. And a necropsy will be done after a dog was found in a creek. The OPP say the dog was found floating in McKay Creek in Head, Clara and Maria Township. The black dog, described as similar to a lab, was found yesterday morning by a passerby. This dog did not have an ID tag or a microchip, but if you have any information about this, you're asked to call the Upper Ottawa Valley OPP. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
You heard the man, 613-750-1310. It is time for the Talk Back Hour here on the Rob Snow Show. Derek Fage here filling in for Rob today and for the rest of the week. We're talking election. Talk about anything you want. How do you feel we're doing? Are you worried about the direction this country is going in? Are you voting? Are you not voting? Are you so disgruntled you're staying home? What do you think? What do you think about this election? I mean, a lot of people are calling it, a useless election, the election about nothing. A personal election for Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau says, I'm not doing this for selfish reasons. I'm doing this to put us in a new direction. I am the one to help us get through this. My recovery plan is the best recovery plan. Does anyone have a recovery plan? I mean, as I said, required reading today, as Rob would say, in the National Post. From Jesse Snyder. He said, where is our economic recovery plan? Parties focus on spending, forgets aim of how to grow economy. Justin Trudeau framing this as a referendum on Canada's post-pandemic recovery. And the parties have failed to distinguish their plans for how they would expand economic output. That's from, by the way, Kevin Page, who is the president of the Institute of Fiscal Studies and Democracy, and he's a former parliamentary budget officer. Here's what he had to say, and I quote, "We have totally effed this up. From a fundamental perspective, you need to grow the economy in order to pay for public goods. So there are multiple dimensions to this conversation. We really didn't even scratch the surface on any of it." Again, I'll mention, as I've said throughout the week, is it political suicide to say, hey, you know what, to pay off this historical debt, we're going to have to do major cuts to programs and services, and we're going to have to raise taxes. But to not talk about it at all, it just boggles my mind. Again, 750-1310, if you'd like to chime in on this. And it's such an important issue that absolutely nobody's talking about. We can also talk about, as we talked about yesterday, I said this could bleed over into today, and that's how our city is spending our tax dollars. There are a lot of issues when it comes to our city. Are they doing a good job spending our tax dollars? When it comes to public transit, when it comes to garbage pickup, garbage and recycling, it's a big one. We talked about it yesterday. The city, looking for solutions to our garbage issues. A couple of weeks ago, they did a public feedback exercise to gather opinions about upcoming tweaks to Ottawa's garbage collection. Now, they didn't talk about the actual management of our garbage and the fact we have our garbage landfill is going to reach its capacity in 15 years. What are we going to do? No. They didn't ask you any opinions on that. Here's what they asked you, okay? A few weeks ago, they sent out this survey to collect feedback on new ideas around garbage collection with 3 options to help reduce waste. Partial pay-as-you-throw. Households would be allowed to place a set number of garbage items out for collection. Households with more than this limit would purchase garbage tags for each additional item. Reduced item limits. That was their next one. Reduced item limits. Households would set out a reduced number of garbage items for collection. Anything above the limit would not be collected, which is dangerous in itself because I can tell you, we'll have garbage all over the bloody place. Another one. Clear garbage bags with recycling and organics bans. Households would set out their garbage in clear bags. Recyclables and organic waste would not be permitted in the garbage. Just some of the things. Some people want to talk infrastructure. My Facebook page blew up yesterday. People sharing what they their grievances when it comes to the city and how our tax dollars are spent. I can read a few more of those because we didn't get to all of them. So that's something we can talk about. Again, big thing we want to talk about today as well is, are you worried about the direction the country is heading? We're 5 days away from the vote. This time next week, we'll probably have either the same government or a new government. Polls are a toss-up. Could be Liberal, minority, or a Conservative minority. That's what we're showing. How do you feel about the prospect of either of those options? Is one better than the other, aside from the obvious fact that Justin Trudeau would no longer be Prime Minister and Aaron O'Toole would take over the job? As we have discussed at length on this show over the last several weeks, this election is, for all intents and purposes, about nothing. It's a referendum on Justin Trudeau's leadership, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. He's been positioning himself as the natural choice. He said, if we want out of this pandemic, you need to vote Liberal. That's the only solution for us to get out of this pandemic. O'Toole, on the other hand, is not Justin Trudeau, and that's pretty much his advantage. Have you got plans, Aaron? Yes, I do have plans. Can you walk us through the platform? Absolutely. Number one on my platform, I am not Justin Trudeau. That is number one, and the rest is just, noise. He isn't what some would consider a spoiled Laurentian elite, whose personal ambition is to remake Canada in his own image. O'Toole, he's saying he's the new conservative. He cares about people. He cares about social issues, social causes, and the environment. He's ready to spend big to reimagine some of Canada's biggest social services. And all the while, he's the one who cares about the economy. He's got the only real plan for jobs for recovery. He's going to help create a million jobs. However, he hasn't told us how he's going to do that. Quite frankly, none of the party leaders have told us how they're going to create new jobs and help with our economic recovery. All right, let's take a quick call. I mentioned we're taking election calls, also, talking about the city. And David from Ottawa wants to talk about garbage collection and, I believe, the election. David, what are your thoughts?
Well, let's start with the garbage first. As I said to the screener, I wanted to talk about garbage and the elections, which may be one and the same thing, but...
I like that, David. Very clever.
Anyway, the garbage collection, as you pointed out yesterday, they didn't offer us any concept or idea about the incineration. And that's got to be the way to go. Look, people are paying us, other communities are paying us to bring their garbage to our landfills, especially the Carp Mountain. And to a lesser degree, the Trail Road, which is basically our own municipal garbage. But we're complaining about the garbage dumps are growing too large or outdated, so on. Burn the darn stuff. Listen.
Other places around the world are doing it. Now, I know, of course, the pollution is going to be the biggest thing,
The thing is, there is no real pollution in that. Mississauga's got one and everything else. There's no real pollution. The thing results down to just a little bit of ash. And there's nothing else left. There's no pollution.
I know.
The only thing is they're going to want to do studies, okay, where to put it. Well, if there's no pollution and there's no effluents and all that kind of stuff, it's not going to run into any watersheds. That's the way to go.
I think you're 100% correct, David. There's nothing more that we can't keep just dumping stuff in different landfills.
Building more landfills.
No.
People will pay us to take it and dispose of it. So the thing, we'll get it. We won't bear the full cost. Other people will help us pay for it because they wanted to.
Quite frankly, David, at this point, even if we had to pay for the costs, I think it's still something we have to turn to. Regardless.
For the greening of the planet, of course. Now to the elections.
Yes.
Trudeau is a self-serving, narcissistic person, and that's the bottom line. And should we take a chance on O'Toole over Trudeau? Absolutely.
He's got 5 days to convince people because, judging by the latest polls, does it look close? Yes. But, as far as, Polly is concerned, who has 100% success rate, it looks, that meter is moving up on a Liberal minority in the 57% range.
Yeah, and there we go again. All of this election to satisfy Trudeau's own personal vendetta, or whatever you want to call it, and we're going to end up in the same place again. And as far as the having to tax to get out of the pandemic, Trudeau can't get us out of the pandemic. That's a false way of saying it. The pandemic is the disease. It's everything else. We can't get out of that.
But David, he's the only one that can do it. He's telling us that.
Yeah, but we don't get out of it. We deal with it, so it's not getting out.
Yeah, no, I agree, David. It's going to be here for a long time. COVID-19 is not going away.
he's already shown that he doesn't have any kind of a handle on any matters economic. He's even said so. I don't worry about the economy. The budget will balance itself.
Right,
and so
yes.
on.
Yeah, we've heard that in the past. David, really appreciate the call. All right, thanks so much for calling in. Our lines are lighting up. If you want to get in, we do have one line available at the moment. 750-1310 is our number. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with your calls after this. This is Derek Fage filling in for Rob Snow on Rogers TV and City News.
It's a space that needs to be lived in. It's a space that people, have to have an experience of more than just art on the walls. I think, yes, the art on the walls is fun, and it's fun to walk around and see all the beautiful things, and the way Dominic and Edith have curated the gallery is certainly something worth seeing. But coming by and asking questions, again, to Dominic's point of view is, interrupt him, ask questions. I'm here on most of the days too. We have Luce that comes in, Nancy that comes in. So we have quite a few opportunities for people to come in and see the process, and of course ask a few questions. It's a great space. Basically, the one event that we did do, is the jazz shows, the jazz and blues shows. And I think the weird thing to let you know is that the acoustics in here are really amazing. I think that was the first thing that blew me away when we started doing shows, or when I was helping out with the shows. The other part of the business too is we do rent it out for special occasions too. So a few weddings, birthday parties, product launches, that kind of thing. So they're also a lot of fun. We do have one artist that's from the States, but not, of the 30 odd artists, the rest are from either Quebec, Ontario, and one beautiful woman from BC. It's definitely part of the philosophy to maintain and canvas and show the beauty that we have in our backyard. You have the very, very strong personalities in Edith and Dominic, of course. It's wonderful to see how that actually balances out in the rest of the gallery. Without necessarily being, an objective, we basically have half female artists and half male artists in this gallery. But I can't say it's anything more than choosing the best people, and that's just the way it is. And I love that. I think it's great. You go through and you're like, wow, it's all pretty cool. And it's half are women and half are men. It's cool. Like everyone else, we didn't know what to think, right? It's overwhelming at first. You just know that things are closed. And now you're trying to figure out what you do during that downtime, which I think everyone did. And I think in March, the first close, the first shutdown, it was a lot of actually recuperating and resting and not worrying too much on the spot. It's running a gallery is a bit like running a marathon with sprints. So there comes a time where, it's actually nice to just take a break. And then you wake up and realize that, okay, now it's time to wake up and deal with this new reality. From my perspective anyways, I think a gallery can be overwhelming, and I like to make it fun. So you're going to come in, I'll ask you questions, I might even joke around with you. The most people come here, they're not really going to buy art, but they could have a fun time and talk about it, right? And one of the things the gallery does offer is for local purchases, we'll be happy to drive it to your house and hang it for you.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
The Rob Snow Show continues minus Rob. Derek Fage here filling in. Rob will be back next week. Looking forward to hearing his Monday morning. Monday morning is going to be an exciting time to listen to Rob. Make sure you tune in for that. And of course, listen throughout the rest of the week, because he's going to be talking everything election, right? We're going to have the post-mortem with Rob next week. I want to just share, we're talking election. We're talking a little bit as well about, how we're going to pay off this debt. What's our economic recovery plan look like? None of the leaders seem to have an economic recovery plan. StatsCan is out with their new inflation report today, and it is not good. It does not look good at all. Let me share some of the information with you. Inflation skyrocketed in August soaring to an 18-year high of 4.1%. That's the highest inflation rate since 2003. Gas up 32.5%. Pork up 9.3%. Furniture up 8.7%. Chicken up 8.4%. Vehicles up 7.2%. Appliances 5.3%. Higher gasoline and housing prices fueled much of the increase. July's inflation rate, by the way, was 3.7%. That was the biggest since 2011 and was easily surpassed. We're taking your calls. Are you worried about the direction the country is heading in? Well, we can talk anything else, election as well. City services we're also talking about. But let's get to another call. Let's head over to Bernie in Mississauga. Bernie wants to talk about the election. Good morning, Bernie. Thanks very much for your call.
You're very welcome. I just say in my lifetime, I'm 73 years old now. I've seen, for the Liberals, I've seen Lester Pearson, John Chrétien, Pierre Trudeau, and now another Trudeau. And for the Conservatives, I've seen John Diefenbaker, I've seen Brian Mulroney, I've seen Terry Harper, and now we got O'Toole running.
Right.
I just think that after all this time, it's time for the people. If they're all fair, if they get off the patronage bandwagon and really put their hearts when they put a vote, and give Jagmeet Singh a vote and make him Prime Minister of this country after 150 years, a different choice than the red and blue door.
Bernie, why do you think? What would your top three reasons why people should vote Jagmeet Singh, other than the fact of don't vote Liberal or Conservative?
Well, because in our party during our lifetime, we had Tommy Douglas, Davy Lewis, Ed Broadbent, Audrey McLaughlin, Alex McDonough, and now we got Jagmeet Singh. So we've had the people there in the past that could run this country. After 75 years since the CCF and NDP were born, they weren't given a chance to rule. And great strides that were made in social benefits like Medicare and everything came from these members. It's time for the people of this country to sit down, throw off the patronage badge, throw off who you got to kiss up to keep your position, and elect a real free-loving government in this country. And I think that's what Jagmeet Singh. He's very intelligent. He represents a cultural background that represents this country. So I think it's time for his time is today.
Actually, Bernie, really appreciate it. Thanks so much for your call, Bernie. Thanks for calling in. And I appreciate hearing from somebody that is an NDP supporter. If you're not a Liberal or a Conservative supporter, give us a call, 750-1310. Would like to hear your reasoning for, turning away from the Liberals and turning away from the Conservative government, and why you're turning away from it, other than the fact that, you're just sick of having a Liberal and Conservative government. The thing with the NDP, unfortunately, I think for a lot of people is, they may like many of the ideas, but there's no cost to the platform, and we're in the middle of historical debt, and you're throwing money hand over fist at everything. I think that's I think that's one of the main reasons that people are not putting a lot of thought into voting NDP, because there's no costs involved. All right, let's continue on with some more calls. We've got Michael from Cape Breton wants to talk about the election. Good morning, Michael from Cape Breton. How are you?
How you doing, Bert?
I'm good, thank you.
Listen, your previous guest on before the call-in show started, we were talking about Maxime Bernier. Look, anybody with an ounce of intelligence, first of all, will know that this country got no captain at the ship of state.
Right.
And you don't got to have a high education to understand that.
Okay.
Second of all, Maxime Bernier, don't they know his history? The biker girlfriend leaving secret documents as a cabinet minister in a hotel. How stupid are the people in this country? How many times do they got to bend over and go, ouch, before they realize it's time for a change in this country.
Well, there's
going on.
There's a time for a change, and I the thing I respected about Kate.
And it's not for Tweety Bird, and it's not for Mr. Trudeau.
Okay.
Change. They got other options to change.
So Michael, what is
it? Banged on the head.
Okay.
I'm going out and I'm voting for Jagmeet Singh.
Jagmeet Singh again.
Honest and straight to the point.
I appreciate hearing from others because most of the people that call in the show are, I would say probably a large percentage are conservative voters, and secondary to that is liberal voters. So hearing from NDP voters, I love it. Absolutely love it. Michael, thanks so much for your call. Always love hearing from Michael from Cape Breton. We have one line open, 750-1310. Give us a call. Let us know what your thoughts are on this election. We can take one more call here before we head to a break. Anne from Ottawa. Anne, tell me about your thoughts. What are you thinking about this election? 5 days to go.
Okay.
All right.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to pick on you a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, first of all, I mean, I listen to a lot of different talk radio, like in Ottawa, Toronto, and everything.
Yeah.
And this thing about, well, the platform isn't costed out and all that, I'm sorry. With the silliness we've had to deal with this Trudeau government, set that aside.
Okay.
And the only person who is going to do anything to expand our enormous riches from the energy industry clearly is going to be Aaron O'Toole. Yes, he talked about it a little bit, but you know what? As soon as he starts talking about that, Trudeau and Singh stomp out, oh, darn, oh, he wants to continue with fossil fuels destroying the country. That is just silly talk. I'm sorry.
And listen, Ann, I don't disagree with you because we can't just shut off the tap tomorrow. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. We have infrastructure built not only in this country but around the world, right? And you can't just turn that infrastructure over to the electric car vehicle tomorrow. This is a slow process, and this is a big part of our economy.
And you've heard Ian Lee, PhD professor, and knows a lot about economics, and he
sure
has
does.
talked about this very, very honestly and intelligently.
Agreed.
But until there is an affordable, efficient method of, say, heating our homes and everything like that, which we don't have right now, because wind and solar create hardly any energy. It's like less than 10%. Right now, most of our mix is from nuclear and natural gas. Some hydro is in there as well.
Yep.
But most of it is from that. So all of this utopia these left-wing people dream up, it seems to me it's going to slaughter low-income people the most, because all of this can only be afforded by people who have money. Low-income people.
I agree with that, Ann. I mean, if you want to retrofit your home and go off the grid, it's extremely expensive. And as I said, I think it's going to be an extremely slow process. And I appreciate the call. I have to take a quick break, but always love hearing from you. Give us a call tomorrow as well. I'm sure we'll be talking more election. Our number, 750-1310. We're talking election. If you want to switch things up and talk about city services, that's another conversation we had yesterday. A lot of people passionate about how we're spending our tax dollars here in this city, how city council is spending our tax dollars, so we can talk on that as well. But anything election goes here on this Wednesday. This is Derek Fage filling in for Rob Snow on Rogers TV and City News.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, September 15th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 18 degrees, 19 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news this hour. 593 more cases of COVID in Ontario just in the past day, along with 5 more deaths. 46 of these cases are in Ottawa, 11 in Eastern Ontario, 7 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. No new cases today in Renfrew. Positive cases are 2.5% of the over 33,000 completed tests. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was hoping to talk long-term care, but he was faced with questions about 2 candidates who have dropped out of this race after old tweets surfaced. They have been criticized as anti-Semitic. A Toronto candidate speculated Israel is responsible for missing COVID vaccine doses in the U.S., and another questioned if Auschwitz was a real place. When asked why they resigned and he didn't drop them from the party, the NDP leader says they came to their own decision and he supports that. You don't need anyone to tell you everything is costing a lot more, and in August, from groceries to gas, the rate in Ottawa went up 4.8% year over year. Nationally, the rate 4.1%. It is the largest year-over-year inflation increase in Canada since March of 2003. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derek Fage here, filling in for Rob Snow. We're talking election in this talkback hour. We're talking municipal services as well, if you want to dive into that. Had some interesting discussion on city services yesterday. A lot of people putting in their complaints. Some people, showing some of the positives as well. I'll read some of those from my Facebook page as well. I didn't get to everybody yesterday, so I can throw in those. But we've got a few people waiting on the line at the moment. We have one line open, by the way, 750-1310. Election and municipal services. How are they spending our tax dollars? Let's head over to Derek in Ottawa, who wants to talk about the federal election. Derek, what are your thoughts?
Good morning, Derek. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm great. How are you?
Good.
Excellent.
I'm just wondering, there's a little bit of controversy, I guess is the right word, with the polling stations and stuff. Some parents are unhappy that it's taking place actually in schools.
Yeah, I saw that.
So one thing I'm just curious about, though, and I don't think the media's touched on it, what precautions are being made at the polling stations? Because the polling stations usually happen at schools or community centers or whatever, and there's already people doing regular activities. They're doing their fitness classes, they're doing their workouts. There's supposed to be capacity limits. Like, should the voters be waiting outside, and then Elections Canada just lets in a few at a time or something?
Well, it was my understanding. Yeah, Derek, it was my understanding that's what was happening, and maybe that's not happening everywhere, because I heard of a couple of people I know personally that said they had a long wait in line because they were only letting one person in at a time, so it was rather frustrating. And then if you look at the front page of the Ottawa Citizen, they have, they say it's been pretty difficult because there's some parents that are concerned that they're keeping their children home from some schools on Election Day because they don't think it's safe for the building to be used as a polling place around unvaccinated kids. Because if you're a volunteer, as it's also my understanding that you don't need to be vaccinated. Not just my understanding, I know that for sure.
Whether whether you're vaccinated or not, you can still pass on the virus. So the point is you have a congregation of a whole bunch of people in one area. And so I guess maybe to allay people's concerns, the media should say exactly what Elections Canada is doing to mitigate, I guess, the spreading effects of COVID during, I guess, Trudeau's majority election or whatever.
Yeah, we'll have it. You know what? We'll look into this for sure and see what they have. And I think they have the usual things in place that we've had in place all along, Derek, which is, hand sanitizer, where you have to wear a mask when you go in to vote and so forth. Other than that, I'm not sure they, what more can they do? What more are they doing? That I don't have an answer for.
Could I make a quick suggestion?
For sure.
I happen to be one of the people that go to church, and our church, they have, you have to sign up ahead of time. Obviously, you can't do that for polling. I understand that. But there's capacity limits. If the regular limit of the building, and I don't know what it is, so I'm going to make it up, 300 people, you're only allowed to have a quarter or a third or whatever the parameters are. So if you show up and you're not on the list and they're full, they say, sorry, you can't come in. Now, obviously, we're not going to do that with polling, but have capacity limits on the inside and line people up on the outside, because the risk of COVID transmission outside is so low compared to being inside. And so you don't have a big congregation of people all at once, lining up at the polling station.
And Derek, I think that's what they're doing. I believe there is capacity limits. They're not just letting anybody, a whole, they're not letting 100 people in at a time into buildings.
I'm happy, but I just haven't seen any stories on that. That's all.
No, I appreciate the call, Derek. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening in. Let's talk a little bit here. I'm going to just share couple of things on from my Facebook page that you're talking about municipal services, how they're spending our tax dollars. We'll have a caller about that in just a moment. But Sandy here says, I live in Canada, and over the past 10 years, the City of Ottawa has permitted the building of at least 1,000 houses, maybe more. With the average household having at least 2 vehicles, you can imagine the increase in traffic regardless of COVID. The previous administration left space to the side of Terry Fox so that it could be widened from 2 lanes to 4 lanes quite easily, but the present administration, even with the incredible increase in traffic, has not moved forward with the widening of Terry Fox. To add salt to the wound, Mayor Watson and his gang of geniuses have decided to repave the single lane and tear out and reinstall the corners of the sidewalks, a road and sidewalks that did not need repair whatsoever. That just leaves us with the same problem of snarled traffic on smoother roads, just more taxpayer dollars out the window. So we can talk more about that kind of thing. I mentioned yesterday that some of my family members even chimed in. My wife said the lack of integrity by granting building permits for any type of building to a developer. No thought to the character or size to respect the existing neighborhood. Montreal has very strict rules on size and character down to matching exterior finishes to respect existing architecture. No required sidewalks and adequate tree planting. Our development, for instance, doesn't have it to enhance the walking scale. Catherine Landry saying housing crisis and homelessness has been a big failure. So if any of those topics you want to talk about, give us a call. Which leads me to David in the West End, who wants to talk about garbage. David, what are your thoughts on garbage collection and how we're managing our garbage?
Well, Derek, let me tell you, I have the location for the incinerator.
Okay.
Bank Street.
Bank Street? Whereabouts on Bank Street?
Anywhere. Right.
Anywhere.
Bank and Albert if you want.
Okay, now that you have the location, David.
I'll tell you why, okay?
Okay.
In the 1970s, I took an Peen Raider hockey team over to Sweden.
All right.
Okay.
I don't know where this is going, but go ahead, David.
Okay. And one of our tourist attractions, they loaded us on a bus and took us around the town.
Okay.
And the last stop was on Main Street, and guess what we had to look at?
A garbage incinerator.
Exactly.
For $500.
It didn't have a smokestack.
Yeah, listen, the technology seems to be there because city councillors did go to Europe to look at some of the technology, and then we came back, and as usual, we said, well, it seems to be working over there, but we want to reinvent it so we can say, hey, look what we did. I just don't understand why don't we look to, Europe in particular, that's been around for so much longer than we have as far as countries go, right?
That's right. And when the City of Ottawa used to do the garbage, and the original contractor was Kaufman.
Okay.
And it was, in those days, it was a take-all, and that's what it should be. Not only that, but Gus Montagano drew up plans for the summer, July and August. The city gave you twice a week pickup. Not once,
Right.
twice.
Yeah.
Twice a week, July and August.
I have better garbage pickup at my cottage in a very rural area and better snow plowing, right, on our streets than we do in the city of Ottawa. David, really appreciate the call. Thank you so much for calling in. All right, we've got some other callers here want to talk election. We have one line open. 750-1310 is the number to call. Let's head over to Bill in Bracebridge. Bill, what's going on in Bracebridge these days?
What's new in Bracebridge?
Yeah.
Not much. And
Not
that's
much.
what I like about it. It's where my cottage is. I come up to just get away from
Very nice.
The beautiful city of Toronto.
You know what? I hear you, Bill. I have a cottage outside Kazabazawa. Yes, that's a real place. It used to have the longest bar in the country and also famous because Prince's first wife was from Kazabazawa. True story right there. It should say it when you're welcomed into the city. So, Bill, tell me about the election. What are your thoughts?
Well, I just have to interject one thing about climate change. The woman that called in a little earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You know, climate change is the government and the UN's boogeyman that lives under our bed. You know, It's like when your parents told you to go to bed. If you get out of bed, the boogeyman's going to come out.
Do you not believe in climate change, Bill?
Zero.
Really? Zero.
You know what I believe in? You know what I believe in?
What's that?
Ice ages. Do you believe in an ice age?
Yes, Bill, but I mean that doesn't have anything to do with climate change, to be honest with you. Bill, here's what I will say about climate change, Bill. Okay, I believe in climate change. However, because of the amount of responsibility that we actually have here in this country to help in climate, and I'm not saying we shouldn't be an example and do nothing, but the fact it is so high as far as voters are concerned when it comes to issues just surprises me. We're responsible for less than 2% of greenhouse gas emissions. This is a global problem that has to be worked out with the leaders of the Chinese, India, the United States of America. I mean, those are the big players here. I don't know why we have it as such an important issue, quite frankly.
Well, quite frankly, I'll tell you why it's such an important issue. The real big players in this are the 25-year-old kindergarten teachers, grade 2 teachers that have this left-wing ideology that they indoctrinate kids from the time they go to school in climate change. There is no.
I don't have a problem with talking about it and teaching it. There's no problem with that.
But okay, you have to accept it. Anyways, the thing I called for.
Okay.
It's a good, interesting conversation.
Let's get to it.
It looks like Trudeau is probably going to get another minority.
Yes.
Which is probably the best outcome that I can see.
I think it's the most frustrating outcome I can see.
Well, yeah, but I think there's going to be a positive to it because the Conservative Party is not conservative anymore. I don't know who runs the party. It's not the people that are in it that are the problem. It's the people that are running it, behind the drapes or whatever.
Behind the scenes, yeah.
Yeah. So I think what they have to do is they have to use this, and then O'Toole can just step aside.
They need to retool.
Get rid of the old fool. And what they need to do is they need to get Poilievre as the leader of the party.
Okay.
They need to get Sloan back into the party, and they need to get Bernier back into the party.
Oh my God, Bill!
Kelly Leach. Do you remember
the worst
Kelly
idea?
Leach?
Bill, if you want the Conservative Party to win an election, you need to distance yourself from Maxime Bernier. I completely disagree with you.
Oh, okay. Just answer me this one question.
Okay.
What party has experienced the most percentage growth in votes in this election cycle?
The People's Party of Canada, but that quite frankly is it's just a useless statistic. Bill, you know it's a useless stat. Okay, Bill, I got to let you go, but please call again sometime because that was the most entertaining call I've had so far this week. They need to get Bernier back in the party. Listen, for those of us that vote Conservative out there, and I being one of them, have voted Conservative. I have voted Liberal, NDP, Green Party once. I honestly think this shift to more of a center, a right of center is actually a good idea. That is how you are going to win the election. I know many people out there disagree with me for sure. That's just my thought. Listen, we're going into the last segment here of the Talkback Hour. 750-1310 is our number. 750-1310. We can talk election. We can talk about municipal services. Anything goes when it comes to the election. Give us a call and share your opinion. This is Derek Fage filling in for Rob Snow on Rogers TV and City News.
The food cupboard started about 25 years ago. Again, it was a very small operation in the basement of a church. And we have been expanding to the point where we needed to have a new facility. So in discussion with the city of Ottawa, and Jan Harder, the local representative here, we came to this location, which is about 2,000 square feet, located in the Walter Baker Centre. We've been here for about 2 years, and it is much better. It gives us a much broader opportunity to serve our clients better. It's a fairly affluent community in Barrhaven, so you wouldn't think that people would really need to have a food bank or a food cupboard. But people sometimes have a temporary loss of their job, maybe new immigrants or refugees to the community. Maybe there's been an injury in the family or something like a pandemic that causes people to run short of food during their monthly requirements. So we offer any clients who come and live in our catchment area the opportunity to pick up an order of food every 3 or 4 weeks. The need varies from time to time. We have expanded our offering to include quite a few perishables, eggs, milk, cheese, yogurt, vegetables, fruit. But people I think know that we need cans of beans and stuff as well too. One thing that we're consistently short of sometimes is personal hygiene products. You go to the grocery store, you buy your toothpaste and you buy your deodorant and shampoo there. People don't automatically think that to donate those kinds of things to a food cupboard. So we end up buying quite a few of those things from time to time. The pandemic has affected us like it has everybody. Initially, we had to stop the grocery store food donations so that we didn't have any risk of contamination and to have a significant number of volunteer work to be done in our facility. We have a storefront, so it's like a mini grocery store where you take a cart and you go around and pick out the things that you want. That doesn't work during the pandemic to maintain social distancing and so on. So what we have now is our clients can come in one at a time, they make an appointment, they stand behind a line, and they direct our volunteer to, I'd like Kellogg's cornflakes rather than Harvest Crunch, to pick the food that they would like off the shelves according to the allocation, depending on the size of their family. And then they take it out, load it into their vehicle or whatever, bring back the cart, we disinfect everything, and prepare for the next client. We are very blessed here in Barrhaven. We're a totally volunteer organization. So if you give a dollar to us, it goes to purchasing food or to provide some service to our clients.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derek Fage here, filling in for Rob. David has just informed me it is the International Day of Democracy. Wednesday, September 15th. International Day of Democracy, my friends. I've just quickly looked this up. In 2007, the United Nations General Assembly resolved to observe September 15th as the International Day of Democracy with the purpose of promoting and upholding the principles of democracy, and invited all member states and organizations to commemorate the day in an appropriate manner that contributes to raising public awareness. Interesting. How will we commemorate it? Oh, actually, we're holding an election in a democratic society. That's how we're celebrating. There you go. Very exciting. All right, we got lots of calls going here wanting to talk about the election. Let's head over to Peter in Ottawa South. Peter, what are your thoughts on this election? 5 days left.
Hi.
Hello there.
I think a vote for Justin Trudeau is like staying in an abusive relationship.
I see.
He says he speaks a lot about reconciliation, but he's kept Jody Wilson-Raybould gagged and bound for many years now. He's even used the parliamentary system to stop her from speaking. He's used the judicial system to stop her from speaking. That's like systemic corruption, systemic racism is what that is. And all his Liberal members of Parliament are accomplices to that.
And I don't think we've heard enough about Indigenous issues, to be honest with you as well, Peter, from any of the leaders, as a matter of fact.
Yes, that's true. I mean, we had the big uproar when we discovered the things about the residential schools.
Yeah.
That's kind of petered out.
Yeah.
It's kind of gone now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And that there's other issues that fall by the wayside as we go through. And I mean, everyone seems to be turning their attention as far as the leaders go to attacking each other. And now we're no longer talking about the issues. Peter, thanks very much for your call. Much appreciated. Let's head to another call. Russ in Ottawa. Russ, how are you today? I'm good, thanks.
All right. You know, enjoying the nice cool weather, nice cloud coverage. Nice to have a break from the sun every once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. It's nice to hear some positives out there, Russ. Yeah, it looks like some nice weather coming up, too, for the fall.
Oh, beauty. I can't wait, you know.
What's up as far as your mind is concerned with the election? What are your thoughts?
It's just the reconciliation. Like, I understand. Like, I just want to see, like, how come the safety of our children in the education system, the schools, this COVID, and I understand it's greatly understandable, but what I really want to know is, what about the recovery of our children that are on our own territory? What about the recovery of our babies that were stolen and not told about? This isn't discovery. This is recovery on our own land, on our own nation, of our own Canadian children taken from Canadian homes.
Russ, what would you like? What would you like to hear from your leaders when it comes to reconciliation?
We have a blank check to find all our children to bring them home.
Yeah, and you know, Aaron O'Toole has mentioned this, and you know, going into attack mode. But you know, our current government did take Indigenous peoples to court to fight paying out. Would lead to I mean large sums of money in total, but how do you measure money compared to what Indigenous peoples have gone through?
Like it's just lip service. I hear the promises and I'm cool. Like give me more promises, give me a laundry list of promises. But you know what? Can we put boots to the ground and start recovering these children?
Yeah.
I understand. I've heard your promises and promises upon promises, and I promised this, and we're going to do this, and that's great. I don't want to hear your promises. I want to see your results.
Yeah, Russ.
Bring these children home. They're Canadian children from Canadian homes who are buried in secret on Canadian territory. So let's recover them and bring them home and let the healing begin.
I agree 100%, Russ. Thank you very much for your call, and I hear the frustration and the emotion in your voice. It's something that's not talked about enough. Let's head over to Yvonne in Hogsback wants to talk about the election. Yvonne, thank you very much for the call.
You're welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. What are your thoughts on this election?
I just hope the Conservatives squeak out a minority out of this, because this is a mess. We have to fix this.
Yeah, and you know what, Yvonne? I'm hearing that from a lot of people, even people that would in normal times have voted Liberal, but so frustrated with this election being called during the pandemic for what they see as selfish reasons that they are looking to turn away from Justin Trudeau and vote elsewhere.
I think the Conservatives, too, need to just, hold their breath and vote Conservative. Like, don't worry about anything else. It's better that than having Trudeau in for another 2 or 3 years,
Well, and it'd probably be closer to 2 years if all the polls show us, if they are correct, what the polls are showing us, another minority government. Yvonne, thank you very much for your call.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too. Let's head over to Chris in Almond. Chris, let's talk about the election. What are your thoughts?
I think
We're looking at a Conservative minority.
Okay. Two people in a row. Interesting.
Polls can be very deceiving.
For sure.
And the big things is, what's the ballot question? The ballot question is, why is he holding this election?
Yeah. Do you think O'Toole should be going at that harder than he has been?
Well, he doesn't have to, because it's there. And the other issue is trustworthiness. Now with the Jody Wilson-Raybould stuff coming out,
yeah,
you know what? He lied all along. You know,
yeah, it's a he said, she said situation, right?
No, it's not a he said, she said. I mean, it was obvious. The ethics commissioner found him guilty.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was found guilty and fined $250 or whatever. What she's saying is what happened. And it's not a he said, she said thing. He's as guilty as charged. And
right.
You know what? Nobody can trust him anymore. Nobody trusts him on anything. Everything he promised never happened.
Many Canadians obviously do, Chris. I wasn't necessarily referring to the SNC level. There were other things that came out in that book that he is denying. That's what I was referencing.
Denying everything. He denied it during the investigation.
There's no surprise, right?
He denied it, and he's denying again. And everything he's done, everything he said he'd do, he didn't do, except legalize marijuana.
Okay, Chris, I appreciate the call. I want to get to a couple of more calls before we go to break. Let's head over to John in Canada, who wants to talk about O'Toole's leadership. How do you think he's done so far, John?
I think he's doing fine. I think he said right away, I want to broaden the umbrella for people to belong to this party. We need a party that has integrity, that allows to listen to people. As a Christian, I work with a fine Islamic brother. As far as social values, we're one accord. And that's why I like his stand on pro-choice, and also with someone like Leslie, the lady that hopefully gets elected too. She's a very intelligent lawyer, Afro-Canadian lady that ran for the leadership, and she knows how to communicate with folks that have a conservative value, but with reason. And I think my Islamic friends that they've almost been coerced to vote Liberal, whereas their values are more like conservatives.
Interesting.
And so I like the way Mr. O'Neill, he said it's not leadership. People say it's not leadership. He's not wishy-washy. He's making a strong stand so that people in Canada, no matter where you are on the spectrum, have a voice.
John, appreciate the call. I just want to get to one last thought. Jeff, I don't have much time, but Jeff from Ottawa. Jeff, quickly, what are your thoughts on the election?
Last night in Mississauga, there was a tight room full of
yes.
I don't know if they're supporters, but anyway.
No, they were supportors. Yeah, there's a capacity of 500. There were 400.
I don't have much time. Hazel was there, the former mayor, and you had Kretzer there.
Yep.
So he was asked this morning about that, and his answer was, you don't tell Mr. Kretzer or Hazel what to do. But that's all right not to tell them, but you can tell me. There again, his flapping lips have divided the country. Every time he opens his mouth, when he told somebody the other day they go bother someone at a hospital. You could have said anything but that.
Right. And I will say, Hazel said, I'll quote her, I think it's unfortunate there was an election called during the pandemic. I don't agree with that. And she went on to say, the government have been saying stay home and stay away from getting in groups. And then an election is called, which brings people together in groups like Hazel was last night with Justin Trudeau and Jean Chrétien. 400 people in the room. Right? All right, that does it for the Talkback Hour. Thanks to everybody for calling in. Really appreciate you calling in and sharing your thoughts and your opinions. Again, our number, 750-1310. We'll do this again tomorrow. I'm sure we will be talking election again tomorrow. Some of you talking about the election polling stations and the safety of it. I do have some information on that. So if we have time, I'll share that during the show. But coming up next, it is time for Bruce McIntyre to join us, reporter from the Eganville Leader. We're going to have some fun talking about what's happening in and around the Ottawa Valley. This is Derek Fage filling in for Rob Snow on Rogers TV and City News.
Is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smith Falls and the Valley. Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News. Now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, September 15th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Federal party leaders crisscrossing Ontario and Quebec today, the focus of battlegrounds in the lead up to Monday's election. The NDP, though, dealing with a bit of a controversy, forcing a couple of resignations from candidates. Here's City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
At a stop in Essex, Ontario, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was hoping to talk about long-term care, but he was faced with questions about two candidates who dropped out after old tweets surfaced that have been criticized as anti-Semitic. Toronto candidate speculated that Israel is responsible for missing COVID vaccine doses in the U.S., and another questioned if Auschwitz was a real place. Singh was questioned why he didn't turf the candidates, but he says they came to their own decision to drop out, and he supports that decision. Singh also admits that the party could have done better with vetting candidates.
It is more of a challenge to vet candidates. It is something that we're constantly working on improving and working on finding better ways to do. It is a challenge, and it's fair to say that we will always find ways to try to improve.
Liberal leader Justin Trudeau is in Halifax today, while Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole is spending his day in Quebec. Elections Canada reports more than 1 million people have applied to vote by mail. More than half have already returned their ballots. The higher than usual number of mail-in ballots could delay results in some ridings. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News Time, 11:03. 593 more cases of COVID-19 in Ontario today, and 5 more deaths as well. 46 of these new cases are in Ottawa, 11 in Eastern Ontario, 7 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and no new cases today in Renfrew. Positive cases are 2.5% from the over 33,000 tests that were completed. And now your forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
It will be a quieter weather day overall today after that early morning thunderstorm activity. It was 23 degrees very early this morning. That's our high for the day. For the rest of the day, we'll sit at about 21. The temperature will drop a little bit around sunrise. Tonight, mainly clear and 10, and tomorrow, sun and cloud, 25. For today, already reached our high, 23.
And right now in Ottawa, 18 degrees. In Smith Falls, it's 19. StatsCan says the consumer price index, the inflation rate in Ottawa, 4.8% in August. 4.8% more it cost you for basic goods compared to August of last year. The national rate, 4.1. The BMO chief economist, Douglas Porter, says much of the rise was driven by reopening pressures on the economy, some supply chain issues, and to a smaller extent, comparisons to low prices recorded 1 year before. He warns elevated readings on the index may not soon cool.
The energy prices are not going away. We're starting to see some sustained pressure on food prices. Home prices are still an issue, and now wage pressures are starting to pick up a bit. So, as much as I think this might be close to the height of inflation, I don't see it pulling back very quickly over the next year either.
And most people look at gasoline as the main contributor, but StatsCan says the annual inflation rate would have been 3.2% in August if gasoline prices were excluded. Big trucks that pass over the river in Manotick have been an issue for the village for decades, and one city councillor is pushing for short-term fixes.
The Earl Armstrong extension out to 2031 doesn't really solve anything in the short term. So we have the Hard Rock Casino coming in. Is that an opportunity to build that Earl Armstrong extension sooner? Of course it is, but we have to focus on that.
Councillor Scott Moffatt of Rideau-Goulbourn ward says a ring road, like one suggested by Councillor Carol Ann Meehan to City News yesterday, is really not a feasible option. He says there's nowhere to put a ring road in the wider area, and likely isn't anyone who would be willing to accept one either. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Heave hi, oh, the best man in Ottawa was Moffatt Joe. Moffatt Joe. Big Joe Moffatt paddled into Mattawa all the way from Ottawa in just one day. Hey, on the river Ottawa, the best man we ever saw was Big Joe Moffatt, the old folks say. Come and listen and I'll tell you what the old folks say. And he say Big Joe had an old pet frog, bigger than a horse.
Oh boy, there it is, the theme song you've all been waiting for, because it happens each and every Wednesday. If that doesn't get your toes tapping, I don't know what will. What's happening in the Ottawa Valley? Here to tell us all about it, Bruce McIntyre, reporter with the Eganville Leader. Bruce, how are you today?
I'm well, Derek, and I swear on my grave that I think you do this show just to hear my music. I think that's what it is.
It is one of the greatest reasons, that's for sure, Bruce. I mean, that and spending time with David,
That's right. It's not my good looks, I can tell you that.
You and me both. Me both. Well, first of all, tell us, what's going on in the Ottawa Valley in general, and then we'll get to what's happening in the Eganville Leader.
It's a weird week.
Is it? Okay.
I drove the highway a couple of times weekdays, and normally it's bumper to bumper between Renfrew and Arnprior on the weekends.
Right.
People are going back from the cottages. They're still pouring out there. I don't know what's going on. The cars, I drove home, what day it was, Monday, from Arnprior, and it was bumper to bumper all the way to Renfrew. I don't know what's going on. Maybe there's something in the water. People are coming to get our water. I don't know. Maybe it's low COVID numbers. We're not sure, but
people may be taking extra days, right? Taking some extra days to enjoy time, because the weather's been quite beautiful. It's supposed to continue to be beautiful throughout the fall. So maybe cottagers just taking an extra day here and there.
Maybe that's what it is, because it's just been really weird, and people are anxious. People are feeling a little anxious. I think you can relate that to COVID. The uncertainty of the election. People are just anxious. I think it's the general feeling of, I could describe one word of the county.
Let's talk about cases. You mentioned COVID cases in the Valley, and in particular at the Catholic University in Barry's Bay.
Well, it's unfortunate, but once again, they're the hot spot. It happened before, a couple of months ago. They were the hot spot of the county, and they've done it again. I mean, I'm not blaming them, but it's frustrating when we've been doing so well. I mean, we really have been a leader as far as cases go, and now we have 10 active cases. None reported today, thank goodness.
Okay.
I think it's just natural of the COVID, Delta variant. And I know our Chief Medical Officer of Health, Acting Director, Bob Cushman, he's not afraid to express his displeasure and disappointment, and he did it again. He's just like, come on, people. come on, we can do this. And he's been a very, very good acquisition by the local health board. I've said this to Rob before. We are so lucky to have Dr. Cushman leading charge.
Yeah.
So doing a great job. So hopefully the 10 will, unfortunately, number will go up. Not a lot, I hope. But I just hope that the Barry's Bay people are doing okay.
Well, and in smaller communities as well, you have to be that much more careful.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I mean, one person can shut down a community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really, and hospital has 21 beds. That's it.
Let's move on to the next topic. Conacher Valley to close on September 30th for the National Truth and Reconciliation Day. It's Ontario as a whole has not decided to make it a statutory holiday, but Conacher Valley has.
And I think you may see a domino effect around Conacher Valley. Conacher Valley, for your listeners, is Eganville. It's the center of the township, and it also includes Foymount and Sebastopol. But the reason, I think the number one reason why they're doing this, one, it's a holiday, but two, they are right beside Pequawkanagan, Golden Lake.
Right.
And Pequawkanagan residents do their shopping in Eganville. They do their commerce in Eganville. So it's only natural that Conacher Valley should close that day. And it's a good move by them, I think. And I think you may see, I could be wrong, it may spill over to North Algona Wilberforce and Kildoon Haggerty Richards. We'll see.
Yeah, I think you're right, Bruce. I think you're going to see the same thing. I know you're excited for this next one, because you're a big cider fan. You love your cider. And alcoholic apple cider is coming to the valley. Tell me about this.
I am thrilled beyond almost as thrilled as the Stomp and Tom concert, let me tell you. Nice couple, the Brookers, moved this farm in Scotch Bush Road, which is remote. It's people who know the valley know where it is.
Okay.
And they bought an apple orchard, and it's just huge. It's one of the bigger ones, not as big as McLaren's in Renfrew, but it's big. And they are going to enter the world of alcoholic cider and regular cider as well. And it is a growing industry. I know myself, I switched from beer to cider 3 years ago. Just wanted something different.
Right.
And boy, I have not gone back. It's just amazing. And I lost 18 pounds. I wasn't even I'm not a big drinker. I'm not a big drinker. I'm telling you, I am not a big drinker. I lost 18 pounds in 5 months by switching to cider. Weird.
Well, there you go. You gave people some advice on how to lose some weight, right? There you
go.
This is exciting.
Come to Brookers and have the cider.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a try. I love cider myself as well. We've been talking election for a long time on this show, as you know, and we're looking at an election update from you. Tell us about what's the latest in the area.
The latest in the area. Do you have the paper in front of you, Derek?
I do.
Okay, go to page 6, will you?
Okay.
Okay. I want you to take a look at the picture of Jody Primo on the right.
Okay.
And Sydney Mills on the bottom left. Look at it carefully. What do you see different?
What do I see? Is this a trick question?
No. Don't look at the candidates. Look at the picture.
Hold on. I'm trying to... I just lost it.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what the difference is.
Okay.
Liberal Cindy Mills is campaigning in Eganville, and in the background are 2 volunteers.
Okay.
They're gentlemen, probably in their 60s. And if you look at Jody Primo, she's campaigning the Renfrew Fair, dressed like a country gal. And her 2 background volunteers are youth. They're 116, 117. She is capturing the youth vote. And I believe she's running a strong second to Cheryl Gallant, our incumbent.
Yeah.
There was a debate last night, which Cheryl did not attend. She doesn't do debates. She doesn't do media appearances. And she doesn't talk to anybody. She wins.
That's strange, hey? I mean, she's been there since what, 2000?
2000.
MP since 2000.
7 straight elections.
Holy cow!
She mows them down like a harvester in the field. So you can use that for my Valley reference.
I like it. So tell me, Jody has a real chance here, then?
I don't think in a perfect world, she would. If every committed voter who wants change comes out and votes in the county for Jody, then she will win. But that's not going to happen in my world. Maybe in your world, it's not going to happen. But these things have happened. I think she'll finish a strong second. I mean, the NDP did very well last year, or the last election, in both provincial and federal elections. They made some huge gains at the expense of the Liberals.
Right.
And the Greens, unfortunately, are not going anywhere fast in this riding. They had a good. The candidate, I don't know who it is. La Riviere. I haven't met the man. I'm sure he's a very nice.
Oh, that's
guy,
right, Michael La Riviere. Yes.
Yeah, but the National Greens are dragging him down. So I don't know what's going to happen there.
Yeah.
But I do see the NDP finishing second, at least in the riding. So that'll be a huge gain for them.
Yeah, and Jody, I mean, interesting background. She's a lawyer, right? She has she owns her own law firm out there in her hometown of Deep River.
Yep. I know Jody very well.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, when I started the fair, she goes, "You stranger," because I do all the court reporting for the leader, and she's in court quite a bit. And quite often, I'm in her courtroom that she is defending, and she's very good at what she does. She's an awesome defense lawyer, and we had a nice little chat about this and that. And I wish her well. I wish all the candidates well. But I got a soft spot for Jody, and. You never know what's going to happen at voting day.
Yeah, and even if, she bridges the gap, this time around, listen, from what it looks like, it's going to be a Liberal minority. We'll be back doing this in 2 years, and, maybe she makes some headway this election, and she comes back next time. Let's quickly move on to the Renfrew Fair that was incredibly successful. I mean, so successful that the home of the world-famous back bacon on a bun was closed the last day of the fair because they ran out of food.
They ran out of food. Jesse's Barbecue ran out of food.
Really?
Yep.
Holy jeez.
It was the manager. She asked the amusement company, Robertson, to bring in extra rides or extra food vendors just in case. It doesn't cost them anything. They're there anyway.
Right.
Good thing she did.
No kidding.
She did.
Yeah, you had lineups there.
We had lineups. It was only 4 days opposed to 5 days, but I was there for 3 of the 4 days, and it was amazing. People were happy. I'd say about half the people there wore a mask, half didn't, which is not bad. Considering.
Yeah.
Most of the mask wearers were young families. That was the majority of older people. So great fair. It didn't rain, which is amazing. It always rains at the Renfrew Fair. No rain, and people just wanted to get out and do something. They wanted to go do something. And even though the fair was scaled down, half the rides, half the food vendors, 1 day gone, no demolition derby, which is the big draw.
Oh, yeah.
The gates were flowing, and the organizers were just thrilled, A, that it actually happened, and B, that they were such a success. So good for them.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised, with the challenges of COVID and it being, a virtual fair. I think people are just desperate to get back out and enjoy and spend time with, with their neighbors, right?
Yeah. Oh, the lineup for the rides, Derek, were insane. Worse than Wonderland.
I love it. Bruce, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us again today.
All right, Derek, have a great week, and I hope your listeners go and buy the Eganville Leader. Keep me have a job.
Exactly. Go subscribe to the Eganville Leader. Get over there and subscribe to the Eganville Leader. That is eganvilleleader.ca to get your subscription. That was Bruce McIntyre, reporter with the Eganville Leader. Don't go away. We're going to be talking vaccine passports, reactions to the vaccine passport. The Ontario officials have released more guidelines and more guidance on the implementation. That's a tough word this morning for me. Of the province's proof of vaccination system, which comes into effect on September 22nd. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, break it down for you, and get a reaction from Rocco, Rossi, president of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. Derek Fage here filling in for Rob Snow, right here on Rogers TV and City News.
When it came to opening the business, because I was so young, there was a lot that I didn't know about management, financial management, management of people, all around management, I think is the word that I always come back to. I think that I always had a passion and I knew that I wanted to create a space for people to get their hair done, but I had no idea, even having studied business management, what it really took to open a business as well as sustain a successful business. So in 2014, I was actually working with Angela Sutcliffe. She was my business coach at the time, and she was like, what's your niche? Like, what separates you from other salons? And when we started to really dig, it was the curls. It was the fact that we work with all curl types, curly, kinky, wavy, coily, which is how we identify our curl types. And then you have straight hair as well, of course. But more than 70% of the world has some sort of curl pattern to their hair. And we just realized that that was not being addressed. It wasn't something we learned about in school. So I went to the States and I traveled all over to kind of gain the information that I have now to be able to share it with our clients and as well as with other stylists. So in March, when it came I thought it was going to last, a week, 2 weeks. I think it started off at 2 weeks, and I was like, cool, I have 2 weeks to just relax, that's fine. So I was actually in a position where I was not happy, so to say, but I was a little bit happy, to be honest, just because of what I was experiencing personally. Now, when that extension started to happen, it was not a great feeling. It was very uncomfortable not knowing how I was going to support myself financially. So I'm so excited about the Academy. It's something that I started, and I launched it during the pandemic. So I've been teaching for a number of years. I've been educating for a number of years. I educated at Algonquin. I've educated at Versailles Hair Academy. And I've also educated in my own space, in this space and my old space up on Greenbank. And so it was just a continuum of what, I've been doing for these years. When we have a client in our chair, it's not just about making your hair look great. It's about how do you go home and take what we've just taught you and emulate that. So now with a world where people want to quote unquote be diverse and inclusive, what does that really look like in a salon setting? And for me, it looks like being able to invite any curl type, any hair type really, because I can take care of straight hair types just as well as, I can take care of curls. And we cater to all curl types regardless of what you look like on the outside, we got you.
Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derek Fage here from Rogers TV, filling in for Rob Snow all week long. Vaccine passports. I think we're going to be talking about this for a long time, but in particular today, everybody is talking about it because Ontario officials have released more guidance on the implementation of the province's proof of vaccination system, which comes into effect on September 22nd. The vaccine certificate system will cover higher risk indoor spaces where masks can't be worn at all times, officials say. The province has amended its list to apply to many settings. I'll just go over some of them very quickly. Restaurants and bars, nightclubs, meeting and event spaces, sports and fitness facilities and gyms, sporting events, casinos, bingo halls, gaming establishments, concerts, music festivals, theaters, cinemas, strip clubs, bathhouses, sex clubs, racing venues, indoor areas of water parks, areas of commercial TV where studio audience will be treated as patrons who have to be fully vaccinated. So there's a bit of a breakdown. We want to get some reaction on this, so we're joined by Rocco Rossi, president of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. Rocco, how are you?
Fantastic, Derek. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. And I think this is something that many, many businesses have been waiting for. I'd like to get your reaction to the details on what we got on the vaccine passport system.
Well, first off, overall, very positive.
Okay.
Because as you noted, a number of businesses were already going out with vaccination policies. We all, as businesses, have a duty and an obligation under labor law to provide for safe work environments for ourselves and our employees. We doubly want to create circumstances where people feel confident to return to work and to come into our businesses and keep them as safe as possible. It was more difficult for individual businesses to do this without the guidance and enforcement of government. So you had small vocal attacks on those businesses who went out to try to provide that level of security. So this is very positive.
And it created some confrontations, and that's why small businesses, in particular independent businesses, were looking for leadership from the provincial government, right, Rocco?
100%, and we've already had an enormous dividend that we also saw in Quebec and BC when they announced, and that is an acceleration in the number of people being vaccinated, which is a positive step. The things that are still kind of outstanding. And look, nothing is going to be perfect the first moment it's out, as we've seen with everything to do with COVID.
There's always going to be missing pieces. So you're seeing some. What is missing? What is there anything big missing from the plan?
Well, look, one of the big pieces is we'd like to have legal protection and direction around what we can ask of our employees as well, because you have the circumstance right now that, for instance, a restaurant, as a patron, I know, because I have to show my pass to get in, that all of the patrons are fully vaccinated, but I don't necessarily know that of the employees. And that's a bit of a head scratcher that would be important to clarify. For the smaller businesses, that don't have HR departments and lawyers and deep-pocketed resources, making sure that if readers are required for when the QR codes come, that some supports are put in place for businesses. I think the notion of fining businesses if someone tries to game the system and get in with fraudulent documents is totally unfair. There shouldn't be any fines to the business. If an individual tries to game the system, they should be fined. They should be punished 100%, but not businesses.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Rocco, because, you're going to have a position where it's going to be a little slower for people to get in. There's going to be some, a bit of frustration when it comes to that. I'd like to think most people in Ottawa are going to be in Ontario are going to be quite patient as we go through this process. But you have to be very careful to stay away from any sort of conflict whatsoever, and enforcement has been left up to businesses, and obviously there's concerns here, right?
For sure. You don't want to have a 19-year-old server having to try to explain, that shouldn't be. No one wants to be a cop in this circumstance, but what everyone doesn't want to be even more is shut down again. So they understand there's going to be some pain for this, but this is a way of opening and keeping open our economy as safely as possible. So that's important. We'd also, and in Ottawa, you're going to feel it, and anyone that's along the borders with other provinces, one of the missing pieces is really, because we would have preferred a national system, nationally recognized card or QR code, so that you can very easily go across the borders and not have to deal with multiple systems. So building in interoperability, if you will. So you go from Ottawa over to Gatineau, you shouldn't have to have a different system. And these are things that need to be worked out.
I agree. And I think, that's the problem with, different levels of government is sometimes they just keep passing the ball back and forth as far as responsibility goes. But, as somebody and living in Ottawa in particular, we're so close, right? We're across from each other, Quebec and Ontario, and there's a lot of movement between those two provinces, and it's going to make it difficult for people and quite cumbersome, as a matter of fact.
100%. So those are things that, and that's why we were calling for several months that it be done nationally for exactly that reason. But look, these are all things that can and need to be worked out. And again, no one step that any of us is taking is the 100% solution. It's all about adding layers of safety and dealing with this pandemic. So, we also, for instance, like our friends at the Ottawa Board of Trade and other chambers and boards across the province are handing out free rapid antigen tests. These will be under 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Add that additional layer for your staff, and we're handing them out free to businesses under 150 employees to, again, add that other layer. Nothing 100%, but this is all about mitigating risk as much as possible. We're not going to get to zero on COVID, but we want to keep it at a place where it's not crushing our healthcare system. We're not putting people unnecessarily at risk, and we're giving them the confidence to go back. It's interesting, last night Broadway opened up to full theaters, which they weren't able to do before the vaccine passports came to New York City. And we expect to see that see that as well. And that's another piece we'd love to see. If you institute the system, then, the senators should be able to fill their, fill the arena.
Yeah, single game tickets just went on sale, and, they've lost a lot of money, right? For a small market team in particular. Rocco, always a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Stay positive, test negative, get vaccinated, and buy local every chance you get.
Great messaging. Thank you so much, Rocco. That's Rocco Rossi, president of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. Don't go away. Lots more coming up here on the Rob Snow Show. This is Derek Fage filling in on Rogers TV and City News.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Wednesday, the 15th of September. Good morning, I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa, mostly cloudy, 17 degrees, 19 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. Another day with fewer than 600 new cases of COVID-19 in Ontario today, but a slight increase from yesterday. 593 new infections. 5 more people have died. The province says Ottawa has 46 new cases. Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 7. The Eastern Ontario Health Unit, 11. No new cases reported yet today in Renfrew County, but updated local numbers will come this afternoon. The 2-week grace period for Quebec's vaccine passport system is now over. Everyone 13 and older needs to show proof of full vaccination against COVID-19 to enter places like restaurants, festivals, casinos, and movie theaters. A City of Ottawa employee at the Nepean Sportsplex has tested positive for COVID-19. This person last worked last Wednesday and was asymptomatic at the time. Anyone concerned that they may have been exposed to the virus can contact Ottawa Public Health. This is the second recent case of COVID-19 in a city employee after a case at the Ray Friel Centre released on Monday. The province's Special Investigations Unit has cleared Ottawa police in a July arrest where the accused had a broken wrist. The man had been arrested for causing a disturbance on Murray Street. The SIU has now determined that the man broke his wrist before he was arrested. City News Time, 11:33. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. This is Derek Fage filling in for Rob Snow all week long. By the way, let's just start this segment off with Happy International Day of Democracy. For those of you that didn't know, it is the International Day of Democracy. In 2007, the United Nations General Assembly resolved to observe September 15th as the International Day of Democracy with the purpose of promoting and upholding the principles of democracy, and invited all member states and organizations to commemorate the day in an appropriate manner that contributes to raising public awareness. How is Democracy Watch celebrating this day? Well, we're here to find out, because Democracy Watch and Wayne Crooks have filed a court case challenging Prime Minister Trudeau's snap election call, and that may be a head-scratcher because we're all in the election, but we've got Duff Conacher here joining us, co-founder of Democracy Watch, to explain exactly what's going on. Duff, thanks very much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Duff, let's first of all start off. I think, most of our listeners are familiar with the name Democracy Watch, but just to give them a little bit of background and what exactly Democracy Watch is and who makes up its sort of membership.
Yes, since 1993, Democracy Watch has been Canada's leading democratic reform advocacy group. We also work on corporate responsibility issues, and we're funded by individual Canadians across the country. 95% of our supporters give a donation of less than $150 a year.
And the main mission being what, Duff?
To make Canada the world's leading democracy.
And how far are we away from that?
We're about 100 measures away from
100 measures? Oh, my goodness.
For every government, federal and provincial and territorial. They don't all need the same changes. Some have made stronger measures, like Quebec has the world's leading political financial system that's the most democratic, one of the most democratic in the world.
Right.
But all of the governments across the country need 100 changes to make everyone in politics effectively required to be honest, ethical, transparent, representative, and waste preventing, and the same for big businesses.
So, Duff, today on the International Day of Democracy, Democracy Watch has announced that it and Integrity BC founder Wayne Crooks have filed a case in federal court challenging Prime Minister Trudeau's request that the Governor General call a snap election. And as I said, a lot of people probably scratching their heads saying, well, hold on, we're in the middle of a federal election. What exactly does this court case mean? Maybe you can explain it for us.
Yes, well, we're not trying to stop the current federal election. We're aiming the case at winning a ruling that the Prime Minister violated the fixed election date measure in Canada's election law, which fixed the election date for the third Monday in October 2023, and that the Prime Minister is only allowed to ask the Governor General to call an election every 4 years on that fixed election date, with the only exception being if a vote of non-confidence in the government occurs before that date. And that's our parliamentary system.
Right.
If the majority of parliamentarians vote against the government on a confidence matter, then the government should fall, and either there's an election or the opposition party members would be given a chance to govern if they can show the Governor General that they would have support of the majority of MPs.
And a vote of non-confidence was certainly not the case, not even close. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite in this situation, right?
Yes, and Parliament wasn't even open. And so there couldn't have been a vote of non-confidence, and everything that the Liberals have proposed since the 2019 election, including the 2021 Liberal budget and the speech from the throne, was passed by a majority of MPs, which is what the measurement is of whether the government has the confidence of the House.
Right.
Or the proposals were in the process of being reviewed by Parliament on the usual legislative timeline. So Trudeau made up a bunch of false claims that things have been stopped and delayed. Actually, the Liberals were delaying them and not moving them forward, or they were moving forward on the usual legislative timeline, which is that something that is proposed by a government takes usually 6 months to a year to be passed by Parliament. Nothing was being slowed down any more than the usual timeline. And as well, on May 25th, 2021, by a vote of 327 to 1, MPs, including Trudeau, voted against holding an election. And all opposition parties clearly and publicly expressed their opposition in July and August to holding an election, and that they wanted Parliament to open and continue operating.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that should be a reminder to voters. As you just explained, Trudeau and almost all MPs, including all Liberals, voted at the end of May against holding an election while COVID is still a danger. And obviously, Duff, it continues to still be a danger. I mean, this complete reversal. Maybe you can speak on that. Maybe you have a personal opinion. Why do you think he's made this complete reversal?
So I'm not sure, other than the speculation that most commentators put forward, which was that they were up in the polls and made the calculation that they weren't going to go higher in the polls between now and October 2023. I'm not quite sure how they would have been able to predict that future, but they've handed a lot of money to a lot of people in the last year, and so they decided to go. But in 2019, the British Supreme Court ruled unanimously that the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's decision to advise the Queen to shut down Parliament in the midst of the Brexit debate was unlawful because it had no reasonable justification and it prevented Parliament from operating and remaining open and fulfilling its constitutionally protected role. Because the majority of parliamentarians in the British Parliament wanted Parliament to stay open. Well, we have the same situation here, so that's a strong precedent, and we hope the courts will uphold the same strong precedent here, given we have a fixed election date measures in our elections law, and a very large majority of parliamentarians wanted Parliament to stay open and not have an election.
And Duff, the other issue is, Democracy Watch. You filed a similar case against Prime Minister Harper's snap election call back in 2008. What makes you think you have a better chance, perhaps this time around? Are things different in any way, as as you're concerned? Okay.
Yeah, a majority of MPs had not voted against an election and and voted in favor of keeping Parliament open at that time. As well, it was a new rule that had just been brought in by the Harper government in 2007, and as well, opposition party leaders had not expressed clearly that they didn't want an election and that they wanted Parliament to open and keep operating at that time. And as well, the UK Supreme Court had not ruled unanimously that a Prime Minister can't just shut down Parliament whenever they want.
Right.
So those are the three big things that are different. As well, the Prime Minister followed the fixed election date rules in our election law in 2011. Harper called an early election, but only after losing a vote of confidence in Parliament. And then in 2015 and in also 2019, first Harper and then Trudeau also followed the fixed election date law. And so we have those three precedents, and that makes a case for what's called a constitutional convention being created. Which is a practice that they followed the law, showing that they believe the law is a rule that has to be followed. And that's part of our case as well. But the main thing is that we think the courts got it wrong in 2008 when we took the case against Harper's snap election call.
Okay.
And that they should follow the UK Supreme Court's precedent and say one MP, even if it's the PM, cannot shut down Parliament whenever they want. When a majority of parliamentarians want Parliament to keep operating.
Yeah, and I know you had a petition on change.org, which I believe more than, 20,000 voters signed, calling on Governor General Mary Simon to say no to a snap election. So if people still want to get involved and help support this case, that you have filed in federal court, how can they go about doing so?
If they want to support it, we welcome the support because there are costs to bringing a case like this, and they can see on the homepage on democracywatch.ca, the Government Ethics Fund, and that's for funding all sorts of cases on government ethics, like issues like this, and to stop abuses of power that Democracy Watch has brought against the federal government. We have some cases in Ontario against the Ford government. We also challenged the snap election calls by the BC Premier last fall and the New Brunswick, the BC NDP Premier last fall, and the New Brunswick Progressive Conservative Premier last fall, because snap elections are unfair, and BC and New Brunswick also have fixed election date rules in their election law, and we think the premiers there also violated those rules by calling snap elections.
Do you have any
update? How they can support it.
Any update on the cases here in in Ontario against the Ford government. Is there any movement on any of those?
Yes, we're challenging in those cases mainly the rulings by the Ontario Integrity Commissioner that led off a whole bunch of Ford and Progressive Conservative Party connected lobbyists, one for violating the law, and secondly, didn't penalize a bunch of them that actually were found to have violated the law. And as a result, those lobbyists' identities remain secret, and we don't know who they are, even though they violated the law in serious ways. And also, the commissioner set a standard that essentially says it's okay for a lobbyist to fundraise for or do favors for or campaign for a politician and then lobby them right afterwards. And the Ontario lobbying law says very clearly that creates a conflict of interest.
Right.
And you can't lobby a politician when you've helped them win election or fundraise for them.
Right.
And we're just trying to get that ruling reversed so that we don't have unethical lobbying legalized by the commissioner.
Duff, really appreciate your time today and talking to us and sharing this information on this case.
Thank you very much. I'll keep you updated.
Thank you. That's Duff Conacher, co-founder of Democracy Watch. If you want to find out, by the way, what more about what they're about, you can head over to democracywatch.ca. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk a little bit more about the vaccine passport, the Ontario vaccine passport, get more reaction to the details from an infection control perspective. Dr. Christopher Labos joining us. He is a cardiologist and epidemiologist and an associate professor with McGill University. He'll be coming up after the break. Derek Fage here, filling in for Rob Snow on Rogers TV and City News.
It started out with a small outdoor booth in what was called Artist Alley, which is actually the area just outside our store on William Street, where for a couple of years we sold our jewelry directly on the street. And then we slowly evolved to having an indoor location in this building, 55 Borrowed Market Square. We then moved to another location in Place de Ville, and then moved back down here on Dalhousie Street at Irrigere in the 90s, and then back into this building again in 2000 as a collection. I do a collection of jewelry called Cirque that's mainly beaded work with a combination of semi-precious and vintage beads. And then she does a hat collection called Fanfreluche that's all cut and sewn hats in a variety of fabrics and for all of the seasons of the year. We've curated and sourced the artisans that we represent in a lot of different ways over the years since it's been, since 1985. Some people come to us since we're known, and other artisans that we represent might recommend that they come and see us. Some people we find at craft shows, or we see their work, somebody wears it in, and we go and track it down and bring it. And then some people, interestingly, are with us in one medium, and then sometimes they evolve to another. They're all Canadian and mainly local. With the roughly 50 people that we have, I'd say more than half of those are Ottawa-Gatineau, and then the rest are from other cities in Canada, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, etc. If you can afford it, go to a small business and spend some money. It's lovely when you come in and, give me a pep talk and tell me how much you love this place and you've been coming here for years. But if you can afford it, please spend some money too, because all the pep talks in the world are not going to pay my rent, which is still full rent even when we're closed. Then secondly, if you can't afford to spend money, follow the businesses that you want to support on social media. Go to their Instagram, go to their Facebook, follow their Twitter, and then retweet, share their Facebook page, like and comment. Because if you can't afford to, as many of us can't right now, to do extra expenditures, doing all of those little things like that will raise the visibility of those small businesses, and hopefully for them result in some online or curbside or other business for them.
world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Derek Fage here, filling in for Rob Snow all week long. As you've heard a little bit earlier on in the show, we mentioned it. I'm sure you've been following City News here all morning long. And one of the bigger announcements, of course, is Ontario officials have released more guidance on the province's proof of vaccination system, on their vaccine certificate, as they're calling it. The vaccine certificate system will cover higher risk indoor spaces where masks can't be worn at all times. That's what officials are saying. The province has amended its list to apply to many settings: restaurants and bars, nightclubs, sporting events, casinos, goes on and on. Here to get some more reaction, we're joined by Dr. Christopher Labos, cardiologist and epidemiologist and associate professor with McGill University. Dr. Labos, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Let me just make a small correction.
Yes.
In case somebody gets angry with me.
Okay.
I'm an associate professor at McGill University. I am an associate with the McGill Office of Science and Society, which is a bit of a different thing. So lest anybody tries to get me in trouble over that, we'll just make that small correction.
Okay. I appreciate that, Dr. Labos. And don't worry, we always put the blame of these things on producer David. So, you and I are in the clear. Nothing to worry about. Let's get your initial reaction on the vaccine passport and the new information that's been rolled out.
Well, I think what you're seeing is across this country is that you're having provinces implementing something along these lines, something, whether you call it a vaccine passport or a vaccine certificate or what have you. It's, proof of vaccination. It's, I think, a recognition of the reality that if you're going to have a group of people in an indoor space, it's going to be a lot safer if all these people are fully vaccinated. The risk won't be zero, but it is going to be less. And so if we want businesses to stay open and to be able to operate safely, this is...
Dr. Labos, sorry, you just broke up for a minute there. Sorry, for a second. I just wonder as well, are you surprised that there's no passport in place or certificate in place for employees? Because, I think that's something that we're going to continue probably to talk about. Perhaps it's a legal thing, but for many businesses. But what's your opinions on that?
Well, it's obviously suboptimal, and my understanding is that it is very much a legal thing that the labor code does not allow for you to require people to be vaccinated to work in a specific place. And again, that's a legal issue. You have to speak to the legal people about that. From the medical issue, from the scientific issue, again, the more people get vaccinated, the less COVID we have. I think the fundamental truth of that concept has been well established. So we have a problem, and throughout this pandemic, we have the ideal, and then we have the practical. So from the ideal medical perspective, it would be great if everyone was vaccinated. We unfortunately sometimes have to live with the practical realities of the world we live in, and there may not be much that we can do about that.
Right. The other question I have is, so there's some exemptions that exist, okay? Officials say exemptions will be made in certain circumstances. So let's look at some of these circumstances, and maybe I can just get your feedback. When a patron enters an indoor area solely to use a washroom, pay for an order, or access an outdoor area that can only be accessed through an indoor route, for the longest time, even to get up to go to the washroom, if we were eating indoors, we had to put on a mask. But if you're just running in to use the washroom or pay for an order, you don't. That seems like a strange decision to me.
Yeah, well, so does that apply to the masks or just to the vaccine passport thing?
You're right. I get that applies to the passport, so you don't have to quickly show your passport because obviously that delays things. You're correct. To go into it, to still go into the establishment, you have to be wearing your mask.
Right. I mean, the rationale is, if you think about how restaurants and bars and these types of facilities operate, you have a lot of people who spend like an extended period of time in there. Like you might be in that restaurant for over an hour, much of that not wearing your mask, so breathing into the same air as a bunch of other people. So that's what makes them
somewhat high-risk situations. If you're just going to be in and out for a few minutes, again, the risk is not zero, but the risk is less. So I suspect that the government has put that exemption in as a concession to the fact that this is a lesser risk activity. Now, again, you look at the ideal versus the practical. In the ideal world, everyone's vaccinated and we don't have these issues.
Yeah.
Throughout the pandemic, as I said before, it's often a situation of trying to reconcile the ideal with the practical.
Yeah, and I can understand it. Those with disability, mobility issues, those that have to go to the washroom more frequently because perhaps they have a continence or incontinence, I should say, situation. That's kind of an emergency situation, and as you said, maybe they looked at this and this is a reasonable regulation to help in those kinds of situations as well.
Yeah, and there are some people. Yeah, exactly. So we when you set out a broad government policy, it applies usually very well to most people, but there are always certain groups that have specific needs, and I think the key is going to be, can you have a broad policy that makes scientific sense while at the same time acknowledging that there are certain issues? And when we rolled out the vaccine passport in Quebec, accommodations had to be made for people who don't have technology, who may not have smartphones and be able to use smartphone apps, or for people who are homeless and who have other technological issues and may not have access to a phone. So we have to acknowledge that there are specific situations, and we have to address that, with the fundamental goal being that the goal is to minimize the impact of COVID and to make all of these activities as safe as possible for the general population.
Do you think this will help control a fourth wave?
I think so. I think most people would agree with me that this type of system helps. It allows, or at least it minimizes the risk of people getting infected in, group settings like this, bars, restaurants, and everywhere that it's used. It helps a little bit. It is, we have multiple different mechanisms in place, and by themselves, none of them alone are going to, end the pandemic. But when you use them all together, they do help. So I think this is a good idea, and I think most public health people would agree with that assessment.
I agree 100%. Dr. Labos, a real pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Take care.
That's Dr. Christopher Labos, cardiologist and epidemiologist. This is Derek Fage filling in for Rob Snow. That does it for today. Another great show for you lined up tomorrow. Of course, we're going to continue talking about elections. We've got the Talkback Hour, 750-1310. Write down the number where we hear from you, our favorite portion of the show, where we get to hear from you, the listener, you, the viewer. So make sure you give us a call. I guarantee we'll be talking more election. Coming up after the break, it's the Sam LaPrade Show. Sam in discussing many things happening in and around your community. Sam up next. Thanks so much for listening and for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
The Rob Snow Show.
Tune in weekdays starting at 9 on Rogers TV and City News.